Ja, thank you for your generous tithing to the woke church. 3-2, enjoy the sub. Folks, we've really got to update the emotes and the benefits for subs here because I'm slapping myself in the head thinking like we should have done a doll man one by now. We should have done a doll man one. Hi, I'm Henry.
I'm Jacob.
And welcome back to TECHNOPOVERTY, where we play books as an excuse to read video games and we read video games as an excuse to play books. Jacob is playing Freedom Fighters while I read through Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. We started this on Monday and we're going to continue on through and let's see if we can finish it tonight, gang. I'm going to try to be a bit more diligent about reading. We started kind of late and we were a little loose last time. As you can see, Barney is properly in place, so she's not
right
being a diva about appearing on camera. The little goyle.
She's very cozy. She's excited to see everyone, even though she's a little tired.
But let's get right to the readings. Last time we read through chapter 1 and a bit chapter 2, where Freire was just setting up the oppressor-oppressed dynamic, and the purpose of this book is, the oppressors educating both the oppressed educating both themselves and the oppressors out of the current binary of slavery. I'm just going to get right back to it. Chapter 2 started getting a bit more into the actual teacher-student dynamic and how that creates an oppressor-oppressed relationship. And Jacob, I just see a lot of mid-century American education here as far as Americans being educated into being receptacles. You know?
Yeah.
I guess it's called boomer brain now, but it can happen to you at any age, under any social tyrant.
That's true.
Indeed, the interest of the oppressors lie in changing the consciousness of the oppressed, not the situation which oppresses them. For the more the oppressed can be led to adapt to that situation, the more easily they can be dominated. To achieve this end, the oppressors use the banking concept of education in conjunction with the paternalistic social action apparatus, within which the oppressed receive the euphemistic title of welfare recipients. We touched upon a bit upon this last time. I just want to reiterate it for the sake of definition, but the banking method of education, in which the student is a receptacle that receives and stores facts and figures. They're not really taught to be independently conscious or curious to figure things out in adaptable manners. It's just here, we're going to regurgitate the mandates of the state, the mandates of the teacher, the mandates of the woke church. Yes, a truncheon emote, Ja. That is a very good call.
That's such a good call.
So on the Discord, what happened is I just got a little dissuaded, and also I started having to work on other stuff, but I remember making the Bin Laden emote for its Fugitive Hunter series, and while we can have Bin Laden on the Discord, I don't think Twitch accepted that one because it's Osama Bin Laden. I don't think I really need to explain much there. Osama Bin Laden, the final boss of the fictional game Fugitive Hunter, and nothing else. They are treated as individual cases, as marginal persons who deviate from the general configuration of a good, organized, and just society. The oppressed are regarded as the pathology of the healthy society, which must therefore adjust these incompetent and lazy folk to its own patterns by changing their mentality. These marginals need to be integrated, incorporated into the healthy society they have forsaken. I'm not going to get too much into the details of it, but I saw a lot of dry bar comedy over the past weekend. This is the Angel Studios kind of clean comedy channel on YouTube. And it does bring to mind the good, organized, and just society, the incompetent and lazy, the way there's a bit of a right-wing, this is like classic conservative, who do we permit in and who do we permit, or who do we keep out kind of stuff. But even in the clean comedy, this is the sex that gets through the censor, as William Burroughs would put it. We're defining who we don't count as good or righteous people and who's deserving of scorn, dehumanization, and exclusion from the social beneficiary. I saw a meme on Facebook from someone I knew from high school, and it was a very overly worded, very, you know, it was old, is what I'm trying to say. It's stale. It's stale by this point. But it just said it was like me going to work every morning, knowing drug dealers and OF girls are making millions more, and I'm just being a good person. And it's just like a tired picture of Hank Hill. And I'm like, I don't think somebody who actually is a good person would be like posting for brownie points on Facebook as far as like, look at me, aren't I doing the right thing? Also, like, which drug dealers are you talking about? Because like PharmaCorps, the distribution companies on those PharmaCorps, the dudes who lobby Congress to gatekeep medicines, because they're drug dealers, right, Jacob?
Yeah,
I mean,
certified.
I mean, I don't get what you're mad about the OF girl doing. Like, why don't you just try it if it's so easy and you're mad about being broke?
Pull out! Move!
The truth is, however, the oppressed are not marginals, are not people living outside society. They've always been inside the structure which made them beings for others. The solution is not to integrate them into the structure of oppression, but to transform that structure so that they can become beings for themselves. Such transformation, of course, would undermine the oppressor's purposes, hence their utilization of the backing concept of education to avoid the threat of student Konscientization. The banking approach to adult education, for example, will never propose to students that they critically consider reality. It will deal instead with such vital questions as whether Roger gave green grass to the goat, and insist upon the importance of learning that, on the contrary, Roger gave green grass to the rabbit. The humanism of the banking concept masks the effort to turn women and men into automatons, the very negation of their ontological vocation to be more fully human. Those who use the banking approach, knowingly or unknowingly, for there are innumerable well-intentioned bank clerk teachers who do not realize that they are serving only to dehumanize, fail to perceive that the deposits themselves contain contradictions about reality. But sooner or later, these contradictions may lead formerly passive students to turn against their domestication and the attempt to domesticate reality. They may discover through existential experience that their present way of life is irreconcilable with their vocation to become fully human. They may perceive through their relations with reality that reality is really a process, undergoing constant transformation. If men and women are searchers and their ontological vocation is humanization, sooner or later they may perceive the contradiction in which banking education seeks to maintain them and then engage themselves in the struggle for their liberation. But the humanist revolutionary educator cannot wait for this possibility to materialize. From the outset, her efforts must coincide with those of the students to engage in critical thinking and the quest for mutual humanization. His efforts must be imbued with a profound trust in people and their creative power. To achieve this, they must be partners of the students and their relations with them. The banking concept does not admit to such a partnership, and necessarily so. To resolve the teacher-student contradiction, to exchange the role of depositor, prescriber, domesticator for the role of student among students would be to undermine the power of the oppression and serve the cause of liberation. The power of oppression, the power of being a teacher. Jacob, we talked a bit about, just the subtextual, both homoeroticism and homophobia of the workplace.
Yeah.
And there's this whole anxiety of being the bottom, being the receptacle, not being the oppressor, but being the oppressed. The fear of that just constantly everywhere.
Yeah, you don't want to be on the lower part.
Implicit in the banking concept is the assumption of a dichotomy between human beings and the world. A person is merely in the world, not with the world or with others. The individual is spectator, not recreator. This is also why I'm like, the liminal's in everything, because this all starts sounding like at every level some manifestation of, sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
In this view, the person is not a conscious being, corpo consciente. He or she is rather the possessor of a consciousness, an empty mind passively open to the reception of deposits of reality from the world outside. For example, my desk, my books, my coffee cup, all the objects before me, as bits of the world which surround me, would be inside me, exactly as I am inside my study right now. This view makes no distinction between being accessible to consciousness and entering consciousness. The distinction, however, is essential. The objects which surround me are simply accessible to my consciousness, not located within it. I'm aware of them, but they are not inside me. It follows logically from the banking notion of consciousness that the educator's role is to regulate the way the world enters into the students. The teacher's task is to organize a process which already occurs spontaneously, to fill the students by making deposits of information which he or she considers to constitute true knowledge. And since people receive the world as passive entities, education should make them more passive still and adapt them to the world. The educated individual is the adapted person because she or he is better fit for the world. Translated into practice, this concept is well suited to the purposes of the oppressors, whose tranquility rests on how well people fit into the world the oppressors have created, and how little they question it. The more completely the majority adapt to the purposes which the dominant minority prescribe for them, thereby depriving them of the right to their own purposes, the more easily the minority can continue to prescribe. The theory and practice of banking education serve this end quite efficiently. Verbalistic lessons, reading requirements, and methods for evaluating knowledge, the distance between the teacher and the taught, the criteria for promotion, everything in this ready-to-wear approach serves to obviate thinking. The bank clerk educator does not realize that there is no true security in his hypertrophied role, that one must seek to live with others in solidarity. One cannot impose oneself, nor even merely coexist with one's students. Solidarity requires true communication, and the concept by which such an educator is guided fears and prescribes communication. Yet only through communication can human life hold meaning. The teacher's thinking is authenticated only by the authenticity of the student's thinking. The teacher cannot think for her students, nor can she impose her thought on them. Authentic thinking, thinking that is concerned about reality, does not take place in ivory tower isolation, but only in communication. If it is true that thought has meaning only when generated by action upon the world, the subordination of students to teachers becomes impossible. Because banking education begins with a false understanding of men and women as objects, it cannot promote the development of what Fromm calls biophily, but instead produces its opposite, necrophily. While life is characterized by growth in a structured, functional manner, the necrophilous person loves all that does not grow, all that is mechanical. The necrophilous person is driven by the desire to transform the organic into the inorganic, to approach life mechanically, as if all living persons were things. Memory, rather than experience, having, rather than being, is what counts. The necrophilous person can relate to an object, a flower or a person, only if he possesses it. Hence a threat to his possession is a threat to himself. If he loses possession, he loses contact with the world. He loves control, and in the act of controlling, he kills life. I like the idea of like the necrophilus as a monster movie.
Yeah, yeah.
You become the necrophilus.
It sexually assaults your body and you become it.
Oh, Ja, you didn't have to go do that, but thank you for your bravery in doing so.
What is it?
There's some very old ones there I recognize because like my dad's like a stand-up comedy guy, like one from before the internet, so like he recognizes old comedians, and I know Corolla's got a lot of old comedians on there. Alright, let's get back to the necrophilus. What a cool word. Oppression. Yeah. Damn. Oppression, overwhelming control, is necrophilic. It is nourished by a love of death, not life. The banking concept of education, which serves the interest of oppression, is also necrophilic. Based on a mechanistic, static, naturalistic, spatialized view of consciousness, it transforms students into receiving objects. It attempts to control thinking and action, leads women and men to adjust to the world, and inhibits their creative power. When their efforts to act responsibly are frustrated, when they find themselves unable to use their faculties, people suffer. This suffering due to impotence is rooted in the very fact that the human equilibrium has been disturbed. But the inability to act which causes people's anguish also causes them to reject their impotence, by attempting to restore their capacity to act. But can they, and how? One way is to submit to and identify with a person or group having power. By this symbolic participation in another person's life, men have the illusion of acting, when in reality they only submit to and become a part of those who act. Again, your whole thing with like dudes who just want the big strongman leader.
Yeah.
It's the illusion of acting. Populist manifestations perhaps best exemplify this type of behavior by the oppressed, who, by identifying with charismatic leaders, come to feel that they themselves are active and effective. The rebellion they express as they emerge in the historical process is motivated by that desire to act effectively. Biggest in history, the best guys, the biggest boys, the handsomest ones, the most beautiful.
Most beautiful. Everyone loves them.
Everybody was fucking sucking this guy off. Wow. The dominant elites consider the remedy to be more domination and repression, carried out in the name of freedom, order, and social peace. That is, the peace of the elites. Thus they can condemn logically, from their point of view, the violence of the strike by workers and can call upon the state in the same breath to use violence in putting down the strike. Ludlow Massacre, Harlan County War. Oh my god, actually. This reminds me, just to go on a little tangent for a moment, the Texas Rangers are stepping in after the Houston incident with ICE. Fuck ICE, as always, ACAB. But ICE is doing so bad as amateur Nazis that Texas called in the State Guard of Professional Nazis to show them how the fuck to do it. They got the guys who've been doing this shit for well over a century to show them the way. Like, the investigations are coming, folks.
Defend this area.
If you don't know, sorry, mentioning Ludlow just also made me think of the Porvenir Massacre. This happened in East Texas, early 1900s. Just look it up. There's actually there's actually a nice little piece at the Bullock Museum about this. It's a massacre that happened outside of El Paso.
Oh no way, damn.
Yeah, basically just like they're like 15, 16 Mexicans that got blamed for some local murders, and like the state troopers, like the Rangers rounded up a posse, took them outside town, just executed them. Yeah.
Tale of the loose time.
You see, when Texas was fought over and then integrated into America, there was arguments over whether the Rio Grande or the Rio Bravo was the proper border, which is why there was like the Texas War of Independence, but then also the Mexican-American War. What? White people be weird about a deal?
Here, just take this.
Right, Joe, hold my beer.
There's some serious dynamite in the diner. You look like you could use some.
You know I could. Oh, quick save. Yeah, I didn't fucking know I could do that. God.
Oh yeah, you can save scum?
God damn, that would have fucking...
Good to know, good to know.
So much.
I'm honestly wondering how well we're going to sync up as far as, like, do you think you're going to be able to beat this game in this span I'm able to finish this book? Because I think 1 or 2 more sessions, we'll see. We will see.
Right, oh fuck.
Also, how's the Civil War going, or whatever? This game's so non-politically political, it's amazing. What are you trying to do right now?
Love it. Right now I'm trying to free some prisoners. First we'll fucking shoot these dickheads. We'll let them gather up by this truck and we'll fucking blow it up. Save some ammo.
That's smart. That's real fucking smart. You're using your plumber brain.
I brought a Mario.
Actually, you know what? While we're doing this little reading break, I will actually share the Porvenir Massacre info.
Good times. Every time I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what war crimes.
You should hear the game jaw. I do have it a little lower than I did last time, but also I've changed up the way I record audio, so the VOD, I'll be able to raise or lower the game. Is it too loud? Let me know how audio's going.
Yeah, how's it feel?
I have it about 5 dB lower than I had it last time, because when I was listening to the VOD on playback, I was like, oh yeah, the game's... I wasn't illegible, but the game was a little loud for my liking. All right, just pinned a little info on Porvenir to the chat. Oh, you don't hear the game at all. How's that? It's real low right now because there's no music.
Fall back, all of you. Falling in.
But you hear Jacob, game is silent? Okay.
Oh, damn.
Good thing you got in a firefight.
Whew, thank God I got healing. I almost died right there.
How's that sounding, gang?
Kill that man over there, man.
Sure. Help us. We need to get back to the sewers. The Reds will be looking for us up here.
Still don't hear anything. I'm actually gonna step away from a whip out my phone and check the stream. Now I'm paranoid.
Alright, so what's going on?
Pew pew pew.
Here we go. Here.
Yeah, I think it was just down real low.
Get your ground. Do it. Yes, sir.
Pew pew pew.
Lock and load.
Here we go. Here.
Yeah, I think it was just down real low. Paranoid.
Get back here, squad.
Let's go, boys.
No, yeah, I'm also not hearing it on my phone.
Weird. I love this techno-poverty, guys.
Come on, follow me. Move out. I will patch you up.
Oh, hell yeah.
I feel much better now.
Join up.
Oh, hell yeah, I can have 3 guys now?
Oh, hell yeah, I can have 3 guys now?
Oof. Me and the boys.
Is it coming through real quiet now?
Did something with the connection?
Because OBS is outputting for us, or else we wouldn't be hearing the game.
Alright, let's see.
No, you're good on that end. It's whatever's going on between OBS and the stream.
Regroup, everybody. You're gonna be fine.
Get up here.
Take it easy.
Man.
Pull out. You heard me. Check our perimeter. Come on, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, awesome job. It's good to know.
Give me a report. Get moving.
Oh, interesting.
I'm gonna try like a transition out in real quick.
Regroup. Let's go. Let's go. Get back here, everybody. Moving out. This'll help the pain. Regroup. Do it. I got your back. Fall back. Move. Move. Forward. Come on. Falling in, sir. Take this. You'll be fine. Oh, I'm already better. Come with me. Not me. Observe enemy.
I will search.
Defend this area.
I'll wait for you here.
Abort! You heard me. Regroup, squad. Defend here. Go, go, go. Stand your ground. All of you, holding position.
Exactly, 3-2. That's how I'm going to approach Red Dead 2. Is it because the game audio is on
Get
track
back here,
2?
team.
Let's
I've got your
see.
6.
There it is. Okay, so maybe I haven't quite figured out the multi-track thing yet. So it's like, it's recording both tracks, but it's only outputting track 1 to the stream, I guess?
Interesting.
So maybe what I'll want to do is I'll do a 3-track recording where tracks 2 and 3 are like the vocals in the game, and then track 1's the full mix. So that the full mix goes to stream, and then in post, if it's all fucked up, I can just use the other 2 channels to adjust levels. Real-time techno-poverty problem solving, guys.
Yeah, guys, you know, learning.
This is
Living
gaming
life.
too, yeah. This is applying the principles of gaming to things outside of video games in a productive way, instead of just thinking your life is a skill tree to go up. The A/B testing, etc., etc. Like I'm being cutesy about it, but seriously.
Station. Soviet reinforcements in this section are
The
coordinated from here.
the recognition
Then
of
destroy the
transference of
remaining
ideas
bridge.
from one thing
The
to
ring's
another,
an
instead of
important
just like
supply
thinking
route for the
video games are one
Take it
bucket of
out,
things
and
to
the
receive
influx of
knowledge in,
troops to
and
surrounding areas will
electronics are
greatly
another.
Seize
Sorry,
the
I think
warehouse
I know some older
This is
folks who
where the
have a
Soviets
very
store their
limiting
small arms
view
and
of
artillery
when
that they
approaching
unload
something
from
new. They say like,
ships.
oh, I never learned how to
Taking
do
these
that. I
buildings will
can't,
break.
like, this sense of like,
Learned helplessness.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a rough one for folks.
Dude, yeah, right. And then you load up your skill tree, but
Seems
then
like
like
the
the
best way
game's
down
poorly
those choppers is
designed,
take
so
up the
like you're
landing
already at the end of the game, and
You can
there's
get
not
there
really
to
like
one
a
of those
reason to
old
go back
buildings
and
over
collect shit. All right, now let me know how legible, illegible the volume is. And we will get back to reading. Did I go too low? Let me know.
I forgot that I can re-up on everything over here. Should know it. Okay.
Yeah, I'll crank it up whenever there's a cutscene. Jacob's on watch for that.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna let it sit at this negative. I'm gonna let it sit where it is. It's about 4 decibels lower than it was last session when I was a little annoyed with it.
All right, yo.
Populist Manifesto. Wait, we already did that.
Let's go. Let's go.
Okay, well, yeah, because we were talking all about putting
This
down the
way,
strike. I
big guy.
started rambling about Porvenir. Bloodbound Massacre is another good one to look into. The Cold Wars. The Colorado Cold Wars are very fascinating.
Get
I need to
over
find a
here.
good book on The dude, the father of PR, I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now. Basically, he's the PR dude who helps the coal companies spin the Colorado coal wars. Because this was back in the days of the newspaper in the early 1900s, of course. Communications were much slower, so he was able to be like, well, what are you doing out in Colorado? How do we lie about it to people back east? And that's how you get modern PR, folks.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Just like HR, like it's for the company. Education as the exercise of domination stimulates the credulity of students, with the ideological intent, often not perceived by educators, of indoctrinating them to adapt to the world of oppression. This accusation is not made in the naive hope that the dominant elites will thereby simply abandon the practice. Its objective is to call the attention of true humanists to the fact that they cannot use banking educational methods in the pursuit of liberation, for they would only negate that very pursuit. Nor may a revolutionary society inherit these methods from an oppressor society. Lee Ivy, I believe is the dude's name, the father of modern public relations I'm talking about here, Lee Ivy, or Ivy Lee. It's one of those two first name things, I always forget the order. This accusation is not made in the naive hope that the dominant elites will thereby simply abandon the practice. Its objective is to call the attention of true humanists to the fact that they cannot use the banking educational methods in the pursuit of liberation, for they would only negate that very pursuit. Nor may a revolutionary society inherit these methods from an oppressor society. The revolutionary society which practices banking education is either misguided or mistrusting of people. In either event, it is threatened by the specter of reaction. Eugene Debs, the American socialist from the early 1900s that Bernie Sanders is a big fan of, he has a quote, something like, I can't lead all you socialists into the revolution because then someone just as easily could lead you out of it. And it's like a bit of that, like, yeah, we need to get people in a more egalitarian sense on the same level, understanding what we're doing. Charismatic leaders can only take you so far.
Very true.
And they get very mad when Iran doesn't do what they want. Unfortunately, those who espouse the cause of liberation are themselves surrounded and influenced by the climate which generates the banking concept, and often do not perceive its true significance or its dehumanizing power. Paradoxically, then, they utilize this same instrument of alienation in what they consider an effort to liberate. Indeed, some revolutionaries brand as innocents, dreamers, or even reactionaries, those who would challenge this educational practice. But one does not liberate people by alienating them. Authentic liberation, the process of humanization, is not another deposit to be made in men. Liberation is a praxis, the action and reflection of men and women upon their world in order to transform it. Those truly committed to the cause of liberation can accept neither the mechanistic concept of consciousness as an empty vessel to be filled, nor the use of banking methods of domination, propaganda, slogans, deposits, in the name of liberation.
Watch this shit blow, yeah, we did it, dudes.
Wow, Jacob, you really are liberating people.
We're fucking really cool dudes, you know? It's the coolest, raddest guys. We're liberating. We're freedom fighters.
Those truly committed to liberation must reject the banking concept in its entirety, adopting instead a concept of women and men as conscious beings, and consciousness as consciousness intent upon the world. They must abandon the educational goal of deposit making and replace it with the posing of the problems of human beings in their relations with the world. Problem-posing education, responding to the essence of consciousness, intentionality, rejects communiques and embodies communication. It epitomizes the special characteristic of consciousness, being conscious of, not only as an intent on objects, but as a turn in upon itself in a Jasperian split. Consciousness and consciousness of consciousness.
Take this. You'll be fine.
Liberating education consists in acts of cognition, not transferals of information. It is in learning situation in which the cognizable object, far from being the end of the cognitive act, intermediates the cognitive actors. Teachers on one hand and students on the other. Accordingly, the practice of problem-posing education entails at the outset that the teacher-student contradiction to be resolved. Dialogical relations, indispensable to the capacity of cognitive actors to cooperate in perceiving the same cognizable object, are otherwise impossible. Indeed, problem-posing education, which breaks with the vertical patterns characteristic of banking education, can fulfill its function as the practice of freedom only if it can overcome the above contradiction. Through dialogue, the teacher of the students and the students of the teacher cease to exist, and a new term emerges, teacher-student with student-teachers. The teacher is no longer merely the one who teaches, but one who is himself taught in dialogue with the students, who in turn, while being taught, also teach. They become jointly responsible for a process in which all grow. In this process, arguments based on authority are no longer valid. In order to function, authority must be on the side of freedom, not against it. Here, no one teaches another, nor is anyone self-taught. People teach each other, mediated by the world, by the cognizable objects which in banking education are owned by the teacher. The banking concept, with its tendency to dichotomize everything, distinguishes two stages in the action of the educator. During the first, he cognizes a cognizable object while he prepares his lessons in his study or in his laboratory. During the second, he expounds to his students about the object. The students are not called upon to know, but to memorize the contents narrated by the teacher. Nor do the students practice any act of cognition, since the object towards which the act should be directed is the property of the teacher, rather than a medium evoking critical reflection of both teacher and students. Hence, in the name of the preservation of culture and knowledge, we have a system which achieves neither true knowledge nor true culture. I think the banking method also just avoids conversation in a way that leads into, like, you know, some masculine or paternalistic or patriarchal thinkings on, like, well, if you talk, you start talking about your feelings, and then that might, you know, that might show you that that might express a vulnerability, and then a predator could dominate you, and this is a dominator-dominated world, and I don't want to be the boy on the bottom, except I kind of secretly have a voice in my head telling me I do, but I can't tell you about that, because then you'll act on it, and everybody's out to get me, and I'm just a paranoid man, so it's time to go do family annihilation. The problem-posing method does not dichotomize the activity of the teacher-student. She's not cognitive at one point and narrative at another. She is always cognitive, whether preparing a project or engaging in dialogue with the students. He does not regard cognizable objects as his private property, but as the object of reflection by himself and the students. This is something that I've always felt when it's like, well, like, I just want to share something with someone to read, like, I don't want to talk at them about it, like, don't, like, what's the fun in just, like, I don't mean talk at them in the sense I do with the stream, but in the way, like, memorizing, like, for a spreadsheet for trivia night, or just, like, taking the Wikipedia overview of everything and then just putting it into a sort of TV tropes lensing of just, like, nerd culture or whatever. What up, Crudler? Can't fire up your stream on your dumb smart TV. It thinks it's too much excessive tobacco use and is trying to keep me safe. Yeah, there's a general, like, adult content filter I think Twitch does, because we do cuss and talk about politics and shit.
We say smoking because it's cool.
Man, she was steaming. She was steaming. In this way, the problem-posing educator constantly reforms his reflections in the reflection of the students. The students, no longer docile listeners, are now critical co-investigators in dialogue with the teacher. The teacher presents the material to the students for their consideration, and reconsiders her earlier considerations as the students express their own. The role of the problem-posing educator is to create, together with the students, the conditions under which knowledge at the level of the doxa is superseded by true knowledge, the level of the logos. Whereas banking education anesthetizes and inhibits creative power, problem-posing education involves a constant unveiling of reality. The former attempts to maintain a submersion of consciousness. The latter strives for the emergence of consciousness and critical intervention in reality. Students, as they're increasingly posed with problems relating to themselves and the world and with the world, will feel increasingly challenged and obliged to respond to that challenge. Because they apprehend the challenge as interrelated to other problems within the total context, not as a theoretical question, the resulting comprehension tends to be increasingly critical and thus constantly less alienated. The response to the challenge evokes new challenges, followed by new understandings, and gradually the students come to regard themselves as committed. Education as the practice of freedom, as opposed to education as the practice of domination, denies that man is abstract, isolated, independent, and unattached to the world. It also denies that the world exists as a reality apart from people. Authentic reflection considers neither abstract man nor the world without people, but people in their relations with the world. In these relations, consciousness and world are simultaneous. Consciousness neither precedes the world nor follows it.
Regroup, all of you. Moving out.
In one of our culture circles in Chile, the group was discussing, based on a codification, the anthropological concept of culture. In the midst of the discussion, a peasant who by banking standards was completely ignorant said, "Now I see that without man there is no world." When the educator responded, "Let's say, for the sake of argument, that all men on earth were to die, but that the earth itself remained, together with the trees, birds, animals, rivers, seas, the stars. Wouldn't all this be a world?" "Oh no," the peasant replied empathetically. "There would be no one to say, 'This is the world.'" The peasant wished to express the idea that there would be lacking the consciousness of the world, which necessarily implies the world of consciousness. I cannot exist without the non-I. In turn, the non-I depends on that existence. The world which brings consciousness into existence becomes the world of that consciousness. Hence, the previously cited affirmation of Sartre. La conscience et le monde sont donnés d'un même coup. See chapter 3, translator's note. So there are translations on the foreign stuff, but it's not on the same page, and it's a little annoying because it just says see chapter 3, translator's note, but chapter 3 has a lot of, like, where's the translator's note? Alright, I'm gonna keep on going through. As women and men, simultaneously reflecting on themselves and on the world, increase the scope of their perception, they begin to direct their observations towards previously inconspicuous phenomenon. In perception, properly so called, as an explicit awareness, I turned toward the object, to the paper, for instance. I apprehend it as being this here and now. The apprehension is a singling out, every object having a background and experience. Around and about the paper like books, pencils, inkwell, and so forth, and these in a certain sense are also perceived perceptually there, in the field of intuition. But whilst I was turned towards the paper, there is no turning in their direction, nor any apprehending of them, not even in the secondary sense. They appeared and yet were not singled out, were not posited on their own account. Every perception of a thing has such a zone of background intuitions or background awarenesses. If intuiting already includes the state of being turned towards, this is also a conscious experience, or more briefly a conscious of, all indeed is in that point of fact lies in the co-perceived objective background. That which had existed objectively but had not been perceived in its deeper implications, if indeed it was perceived at all, begins to stand out, assuming the character of a problem and therefore of challenge. Thus, men and women begin to single out elements from their background awareness and to reflect upon them. These elements are now objects of their consideration, and as such, objects of their action and cognition. In problem-posing education, people develop their power to perceive critically the way they exist in the world with which and in which they find themselves. They come to see the world not as a static reality, but as a reality in process, in transformation. Although the dialectical relations of women and men with the world exist independently of how these relations are perceived or whether or not they're perceived at all, it's also true that the form of action they adopt is to a large extent a function of how they perceive themselves in the world. Hence, the teacher-student and the student-teachers reflect simultaneously on themselves and the world without dichotomizing this reflection from action, and thus establish an authentic form of thought and action. Once again, the two educational concepts and practices under analysis come into conflict. Banking education, for obvious reasons, attempts by mythicizing reality to conceal certain facts which explain the way human beings exist in the world. Problem-posing education sets itself to the task of demythologizing. Banking education resists dialogue. Problem-posing education regards dialogue as indispensable to the act of cognition which unveils reality. Banking education treats students as objects of assistance. Problem-posing education makes them critical thinkers. Banking education inhibits creativity and domesticates, although it cannot completely destroy, the intentionality of consciousness by isolating consciousness from the world, thereby denying people their ontological and historical vocation of becoming more fully human. Problem-posing education bases itself on creativity and stimulates true reflection and action upon reality, thereby responding to the vocation of persons as beings who are authentic only when engaged in inquiry and creative transformation. In sum, banking theory and practice, as immobilizing as fixating forces, fail to acknowledge men and women as historical beings. Problem-posing theory and practice take the people's historicity as their starting point. Problem-posing education affirms men and women as beings in the process of becoming, as unfinished, uncompleted beings and with a likewise unfinished reality. Indeed, in contrast to other animals who are unfinished but not historical, people know themselves to be unfinished. They are aware of their incompletion. In this incompletion and in this awareness lie the very roots of education as an exclusively human manifestation. The unfinished character of human beings and the transformational character of reality necessitate that education be an ongoing activity. Education is thus constantly remade in the praxis. In order to be, it must become. Its duration, in the Bergsonian meaning of the word, is found in the interplay of opposites, permanence and change. The banking method emphasizes permanence and becomes reactionary. The problem-posing education, which accepts neither a well-behaved present nor a predetermined future, roots itself in the dynamic present and becomes revolutionary. Problem-posing education is revolutionary futurity. Hence it is prophetic and as such hopeful. Hence it corresponds to the historical nature of humankind. Hence it affirms women and men as beings who transcend themselves, who move forward and look ahead, for whom immobility represents a fatal threat, for whom looking at the past must only be a means of understanding more clearly what and who they are so that they can be more wisely build the future. Hence it identifies with the movement which engages people as beings aware of their incompletion, an historical movement which has its point of departure, its subjects and its objective. I think this speaks to how people seek history and like tradition and stuff as a means of looking forward, and how that's not necessarily like to be just like thrown away as a reactionary or traditionalist thing. It's just what we do. Like when we talk about Jameson's state of schizophrenia and like historicizing everything and like creating maps of meaning and kind of cognitive maps of purpose that kind of keep us from going crazy and keep us cogent and like able to look at the current moment and make sense of, well, what's happening now, why is that happening because of what happened before, and how do we act on that going forward. I bring this all up because I was thinking about, Jacob, when you were in high school, did you listen to stuff from the 80s?
A little bit.
Like, do you ever listen to any like Iron Maiden or anything from the 90s as far as like vintage hip hop stuff goes, or like just like Green Day, or like some pop punk, some emo music?
Absolutely.
I just think about this because I remember not too long ago when I was a little out of, I was like in my mid-20s by this point, but just seeing like a revitalization or like a nostalgia for nu metal and Fred Durst and System of a Down and all that by like high school teens at the time.
Yeah.
I think there's an interesting impulse we see in teenagers specifically, where like, you know, you're growing up and you're looking for like, well, how do I be an adult in the world? And we're so used to like youth culture and teenagers being like marketed as like the new wave of the future. They're going to consume us all. Old people be scared of this. Like the Beatles are upending Christianity type shit. Hip hop's ruining the world. That kind of thing. That seems like ad copy to scare adults. The more and more I'm just immersed in time as a human being on this world and seeing like the kind of cycle of what teenagers go through. Because like I think a lot of teenagers looking for a space of yearning do it rather tend to cling to like, well, like what's a tradition or a hobby space. This is why we have like, you know, third spaces and like nerd cultures that like want to be all like, well, like there's a tradition of Star Wars that's X, Y, and Z, or like,
yeah.
Oh, I'm into Catholicism because of X, Y, and Z historical facts or whatever. But just that impulse is there. And I think there's a lot of consumer brain marketing that tries to get us into this idea of like new and improved and always buying the newest thing is like the manufactured impulse. It's less there than I think naturally is.
Yeah.
I think about this in terms of like gaming right now, because I think gaming's very expensive for a lot of people, and a lot of people seem very happy to just talk about like Steam games they've been like eyeing for a while, or what they're getting on sale, or they're still playing like 5-year-old multiplayer games with their regular friends on machines that can run that kind of stuff, because new computer tech and new tech in general is not able to be like as shareable in a social sense.
Right. It's incredible the level, like, how video games are going to be for the peasants in this weird of like having physical
I mean, that's
games,
us.
like, you know?
Look at us tilling our little digital fields of content. Skeletor smoking that sticky. Wouldn't say that I'm a revolutionary historian, but this passage ignores the importance of sloganeering in prior revolutions, or of not understanding manipulation, sloganizing, depositing, regimentation, prescription cannot be components of revolutionary praxis, precisely because they're components of the praxis of dumb. Yeah, I do wonder about that too, because like, isn't sloganeering or propagandizing in point like figuring out how to compress what you want into sort of like a quick mimetic impact thing so that you can maybe crack open or start the conversation? I'm similarly skeptical, I think, Ja. I mean, again, remember this book also came out in '68. I do wonder, I think Freire lived until 97, 99. I do wonder how the internet and like the reshaping of how data gets across places would affect his approach to you know, a pedagogy of the oppressed in the 21st century, like with our internet technologies and just the shift in the economic landscape, like what points would maybe be different.
Yeah. Oh, shut up. Oh, cool.
The point of departure of the movement lies in the people themselves. But since people do not exist apart from the world, apart from reality, the movement must begin with the human-world relationship. Accordingly, the point of departure must always be with men and women in the here and now, which constitutes the situation within which they are submerged, from which they emerge, and in which they intervene. Only by starting from this situation, which determines their perception of it, can they begin to move. To do this authentically, they must perceive their state not as fated and unalterable, but merely as limiting, and therefore challenging. Whereas the banking method directly or indirectly reinforces men's fatalistic perception of their situation, the problem-posing method presents this very situation to them as a problem. As the situation becomes the object of their cognition, the naive or magical perception which produced their fatalism gives way to the perception which is able to perceive itself even as it perceives reality, and can thus be critically objective about that reality. A deepened consciousness of their situation leads people to apprehend that situation as a historical reality susceptible of transformation. Resignation gives way to drive for transformation and inquiry, over which men feel themselves to be in control. If people, as historical beings necessarily engaged with other people in a moment of inquiry, did not control that movement, it would be, and is, a violation of their humanity. Any situation in which some individuals prevent others from engaging in the process of inquiry is one of violence. The means used are not important. To alienate human beings from their own decision-making is to change them into objects. The means used are not important. To alienate human beings from their own decision-making is to change them into objects. This movement of inquiry must be directed towards humanization, the people's historical vocation. The pursuit of full humanity, however, cannot be carried out in isolation or individualism, but only in fellowship and solidarity. Therefore, it cannot unfold in the antagonistic relations between oppressors and oppressed. No one can be authentically human while he prevents others from being so. Attempting to be more human, individualistically, leads to having more, egotistically, a form of dehumanization. Not that it is not fundamental to have in order to be human, precisely because it is necessary. Some men's having must not be allowed to constitute an obstacle to others' having, must not consolidate the power of the former to crush the latter. Problem-posing education, as a humanist and liberating praxis, posits a fundamental that the people subjected to domination must fight for their emancipation. To that end, it enables teachers and students to become subjects of the educational process by overcoming authoritarianism and alienating intellectualism. Oh, for a moment I thought the camera died. and alienating intellectualism. It also enables people to overcome their false perception of reality. The world, no longer something to be described with descriptive words, becomes the object of that transforming action by men and women, which results in their humanization. Problem-posing education does not and cannot serve the interest of the oppressor. No oppressive order could permit the oppressed to begin to question why. While only a revolutionary society can carry out this education in systematic terms, the revolutionary leaders need not take full power before they can employ the method. In the revolutionary process, the leaders cannot utilize the banking method as an interim measure, justified on grounds of expediency with the intention of later behaving in a genuinely revolutionary fashion. They must be revolutionary, that is to say, dialogical from the outset. Let's see into chapter 2. We'll look ahead through chapter 3, which I'll start in a moment here.
Take it easy.
Ah, damn.
Oh no.
They got me again.
Chapter 3.
Hit their position.
As we attempt to analyze dialogue as a human phenomenon, we discover something which is the essence of dialogue itself, the word.
Regroup.
But the word is more than just an instrument which makes dialogue possible. Accordingly, we must seek its constitutive elements. Within the word, we find two dimensions, reflection and action, in such radical interaction that if one is sacrificed, even in part, the other immediately suffers. There's no true word that's not at the same time praxis. Thus, to speak a true word is to transform the world. I just want to say, this is where it starts getting into some linguistic stuff where it's like, this is much better for you than any screenwriting book, I guarantee. If you want a deep dive into how language works in a way that might help you direct intentional language, look into philosophy.
Eliminate them. Wipe them out. Destroy that obstacle.
An unauthentic word, one which is unable to transform reality, results when dichotomies imposed upon its own constitutive elements. When a word is deprived of its dimension of action, reflection automatically suffers as well. And when the word is changed into idle chatter, into verbalism, into an alienating blah, it becomes an empty word, one which cannot denounce the world. For denunciation is impossible without a commitment to transform. And there's no transformation without action.
Eliminate.
Alright, there's a flowchart we have here of him just breaking down, word equals work equals practice. The word is action and reflection. If you sacrifice the action, your word becomes verbalism. If you sacrifice the reflection, your word becomes activism. I just want to let's throw this up in the Barney cam real quick. I'll get this all set for us folks. Damn. Jacob, let's put that Barney cam on this little chart real quick. There's a little footnote here. Let's get the Barney cam on it for a moment. Pull back a little. But yeah, there we go. Action. Reflection. Word, work, praxis. All right. And you can go back to Bartolome now. All right. Sorry to show you too many words. We're back with the cute dog. Jacob, you continue shooting those men.
Okay.
Stand your ground.
I gotta see if I can reload. No, fuck, I better not have to fucking restart.
Did you load too far back?
Yeah.
It's okay. We got plenty of book. We're good.
No, excellent.
On the other hand, if action is emphasized exclusively to the detriment of reflection, the word's converted into activism. The latter, action for action's sake, negates the true praxis and makes dialogue impossible. Either dichotomy, by creating inauthentic forms of existence, creates also unauthentic forms of thought, which reinforce the original dichotomy.
We have seen Soviet soldiers
Okay, good.
seize the warehouse.
I'm suddenly thinking of Bad Empanada with his thumbnails calling Hassan a Zionist, and it just seems like, well, this is just another drama
Seems like
tuber
the best
now.
way to
Get
down
over
those choppers
here.
is take out the landing pad.
Human existence cannot be silent, nor can it be nourished by false words, but only by true words, with which men and women transform the world. To exist humanly is to name the world, to change it. Once named, the world in its turn reappears to the namers as a problem and requires them a new naming. Human beings are not built in silence, but in word, in work, and in action reflection. But while to say the true word, which is work, which is practice, is to transform the world, saying that word is not the privilege of some few persons, but the right of everyone. Consequently, no one can say a true word alone, nor can she say it for another in a prescriptive act which robs others of their words. Dialogue is the encounter between men, mediated by the world, in order to name the world. Hence, dialogue cannot occur between those who want to name the world and those who do not wish this naming, between those who deny others the right to speak their word and those whose right to speak has been denied them. Those who have been denied their primordial right to speak their word must first reclaim this right and prevent the continuation of this dehumanizing aggression. If it is in speaking their word that people, by naming the world, transform it, dialogue imposes itself as the way by which they achieve significance as human beings. Dialogue is thus an existential necessity, and since dialogue is the encounter in which the united reflection and action of the dialoguers are addressed to the world, which is to be transformed and humanized, this dialogue cannot be reduced to the act of one person's depositing ideas in another, nor can it become a simple exchange of ideas to be consumed by the discussants.
Get back here. Do it.
Nor yet is it a hostile, polemical argument between those who are committed neither to the naming of the world nor to the search for truth, but rather to the imposition of their own truth. Because dialogue is an encounter among women and men who name the world, it must not be a situation where some name on behalf of others. It is an act of creation. It must not serve as a crafty instrument for the domination of one person by another. The domination implicit in dialogue is that of the world by the dialoguers. It is conquest of the world for the liberation of humankind. Dialogue cannot exist, however, in the absence of a profound love for the world and for people. The naming of the world, which is an act of creation and recreation, is not possible if it is not infused with love. Love is at the same time the foundation of dialogue and dialogue itself. It is thus necessarily the task of responsible subjects and cannot exist in relation of domination. Domination rules the pathology of love. Sadism is the dominator and masochism in the dominated. Domination reveals the pathology of love. Sadism in the dominator and masochism in the dominated. Because love is an act of courage, not of fear, love is commitment to others. No matter where the oppressed are found, the act of love is commitment to their cause, the cause of liberation. And this commitment, because it is loving, is dialogical. As an act of bravery, love cannot be sentimental. As an act of freedom, it must not serve as a pretext for manipulation. It must generate other acts of freedom. Otherwise, it is not love. Only by abolishing the situation of oppression is it possible to restore the love of which that situation made impossible. If I do not love the world, if I do not love life, if I do not love people, I cannot enter into dialogue. Jacob, I'm not sure you're loving hard enough.
That's true, I'm not true of heart.
I'm going to pause the reading for just a moment because this makes me want to bring up a very special clip. You'll recognize it in a moment, gang.
Follow me.
Right, let's go.
If you want to peek at what I'm pulling up, Jacob.
What we got here? Yes.
Yes. We're going sicko mode.
Welcome, folks.
Abort! Move! Move! You heard me! Regroup! Get moving!
Joe, the thing is, I don't watch Hassan's streams just because, like, it's in the middle of the day when I'm typically editing or I'm out doing, like, I listen to more intentional podcasts and stuff when I'm looking for something purely audio is my thing. I tend to watch his highlights on YouTube is kind of what it ends up being for me.
Let's go, let's go! Scout ahead. Everybody! Patch you up. This'll help the pain.
I feel
Fall back, come on!
Walther PPK. It's James Bond's gun. Did you know that? You're looking better today, Coop.
Thank you, Albert. Feeling better.
The trail of the man who shot you was ice cold, but I hoovered some fibers from the corridor outside your room. Might take it out at Trolleyville. I'll be at the lab, gentlemen.
Anything we should be working on?
Yeah. You might practice walking without dragging your knuckles on the floor.
Pull out, all of you!
Albert, let's talk about knuckles. The last time I knocked you down, I felt bad about it. The next time is going to be a real pleasure.
You listen to me. While I will admit to a certain cynicism, the fact is that I'm a naysayer and hatchet man in the fight against violence. I pride myself in taking a punch, and I'll gladly take another because I choose to live my life in the company of Gandhi and King. My concerns are global. I reject absolutely revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. I love you, Sheriff Truman.
Oh yeah.
Albert's path is a strange and difficult one.
Yeah, it's getting wonky again.
Thank you, David Lynch.
Incredible stuff.
Seems like the best way to down those choppers is to take out their landing pad.
Move out!
You can get there through one of those old buildings over there.
This way!
Sure thing, count me in.
Do this again and then quick save. Sorry.
Eliminate them!
If I do not love the world, if I do not love life,
Regroup,
if I do
get
not love
moving.
people, I cannot enter into a dialogue. On the other hand, dialogue cannot exist without humility. The naming of the world, through which people constantly recreate that world, cannot be an act of arrogance. Dialogue, as the encounter of those addressed to the common task of learning and acting, is broken if the parties, or one of them, lack humility. How can I dialogue if I always project ignorance onto others and never perceive my own? How can I dialogue if I regard myself as a case apart from others, mere its in whom I cannot recognize after eyes? How can I dialogue if I consider myself a member of the in-group of pure men, the owners of truth and knowledge, for whom all non-members are those people or the great unwashed? How can I dialogue if I start from the premise that naming the world is the task of an elite and that the presence of the people in history is a sign of deterioration, thus to be avoided? How can I dialogue if I'm close to, and even offended by, the contributions of others? How can I dialogue if I'm afraid of being displaced, the mere possibility causing me torment and weakness? Self-sufficiency is incompatible with dialogue. Men and women who lack humility or who have lost it cannot come to the people, cannot be their partners in naming the world. Someone who cannot acknowledge himself to be as mortal as everyone else still has a long way to go before he can reach the point of encounter. At the point of encounter, there are neither utter ignorances nor perfect sages. There are only people who are attempting, together, to learn more than they know now. Dialogue further requires an intense faith in humankind, faith in their power to make and remake, to create and recreate, faith in their vocation to be more fully human, which is not a privilege of the elite, but the birthright of all. Faith in people as an a priori requirement for dialogue. The dialogical man believes in others even before he meets them face to face. His faith, however, is not naive. The dialogical man is critical and knows that although it is within the power of humans to create and transform, in a concrete situation of alienation, individuals may be impaired in the use of that power. Far from destroying his faith in the people, however, this possibility strikes him as a challenge to which he must respond. He is convinced that the power to create and transform, even when thwarted in concrete situations, tends to be reborn, and that rebirth can occur, not gratuitously, but in and through the struggle for liberation, and the supersedence of slave labor by emancipated labor which gives zest to life. Without this faith in people, dialogue's a farce which inevitably degenerates into paternalistic manipulation.
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
Founding itself upon love, humility, and faith, dialogue becomes a horizontal relationship of which mutual trust between the dialoguers is the logical consequence. It would be a contradiction in term if dialogue, loving, humble, and full of faith, did not produce this climate of mutual trust, which leads the dialoguers into ever closer partnership in the naming of the world. Conversely, such trust is obviously absent in the anti-dialogics of the banking method of education. Whereas faith in humankind is an a priori requirement for dialogue, trust is established by dialogue. Should it founder, it will be seen that the preconditions were lacking. False love, false humility, and feeble faith in others cannot create trust. Trust is contingent on the evidence which one party provides to others of his true, concrete intentions. It cannot exist if the party's words do not coincide with their actions. To say one thing and do another, to take one's own word lightly, cannot inspire trust. To glorify democracy and to silence the people is a farce. To discourse on humanism and to negate people is a lie. Nor yet can dialogue exist without hope. Hope is rooted in men's incompletion, from which they move out in constant search, a search which can be carried out only in communion with others. Hopelessness is a form of silence, of denying the world and fleeing from it. The dehumanization resulting from an unjust order is not a cause for despair but hope, leading to the incessant pursuit of the humanity denied by injustice. Hope, however, does not consist in crossing one's arms and waiting. As long as I fight, I am moved by hope. And if I fight with hope, then I can wait. As the encounter of women and men seeking to be more fully human, dialogue cannot be carried out on a climate of hopelessness. If the dialoguers expect nothing to come from their efforts, their encounter will be empty and sterile, bureaucratic and tedious. Finally, true dialogue cannot exist unless the dialoguers engage in critical thinking, thinking which discerns an indivisible solidarity between the world and the people, and admits of no dichotomy between them. Thinking which perceives reality as a process, as transformation, rather than as a static entity. Thinking which does not separate itself from action, but constantly immerses itself in temporality without fear of the risks involved. Critical thinking contrasts with naive thinking, which sees historical time as a weight, a stratification of the acquisitions and the experiences of the past, from which the present should emerge normalized and well-behaved. For the naive thinker, the important thing is accommodation to this normalized today. For the critic, the important thing is the continuing transformation of reality in behalf of the continuing humanization of men. In the words of Pierre Furter, the goal will no longer be to eliminate the risk of temporality by clutching to a guaranteed space, but rather to temporalize space. The universe is real to me not as a space imposing a massive presence to which I can adapt, but as a scope, a domain which takes shape as I act upon it. For naive thinking, the goal is precisely to hold fast to this guaranteed space and adjust to it. By thus denying temporality, it denies itself as well. Only dialogue, which requires critical thinking, is also capable of generating critical thinking. Without dialogue, there is no communication, and without communication, there can be no true education. Education which is able to resolve the contradiction between teacher and student takes place in a situation in which both addresses their active cognition to the object by which they are mediated. Thus, the dialogical character of education is the practice of freedom does not begin when the teacher-student meets with the student teachers in a pedagogical situation, but rather when the former first asks herself or himself what she or he will dialogue with the latter about. The preoccupation with the content of dialogue is really preoccupation with the program content of education. For the anti-dialogical banking educator, the question of content simply concerns the program about which he or she will discourse to his students, and he answers his own question by organizing his own program. For the dialogical, problem-posing teacher-student, the program content of education is neither a gift nor an imposition, bits of information to be deposited in students, but rather the organized, systematized, and developed representation to individuals of things about which they want to know more.
Regroup, come on.
Just the receptacle content thing. We're so literal about it in the production of our media now, where we're so quick to be like, well, this content. I heard someone reference like old Little Orphan Annie comics or whatever, and saying like, yeah, she's been an intellectual property for a while, and like, that's correct terms, but it's just interesting to me that it's no longer like, oh yeah, she was a comic book character, or like, oh yeah, it was a Saturday morning cartoon character, or like, the features of like, it's not like the brand has like a human face anymore, it's just we're aware so consciously of like why like characters are turned into like these multimedia money churning things that we just refer to it as like the IP, the franchise, the product, the content. We've gone beyond like recognizing or valuing the appearance of the human in it, and it's just like, well, yeah, it's doing the thing for the system.
Pull out, all of you.
Authentic education not carried on by A for B or by A about B, but rather A with B, mediated by the world. Huh. Authentic education is not carried on by A for B or by A about B, but rather A, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, with B, Freedom Fighters, a jingoistic game from 2003, high on conveying to us the right kind of patriotism.
Yeah, you know, something to it.
Mediated by the world, like talking about current events and current context and how that makes us feel about A when it's with B. What are we doing here? How are we doing here? How are you doing tonight, Jacob? How are you feeling about the game right now?
In this moment, a little bit better, but I need to get to a quick save so that I quit wasting time. Finally making way. Fighting for some freedom. Let's see what we got.
I find it interesting how much this game has more production value than Fugitive Hunter War on Terror.
Right? I'm honestly surprised at how modern this feels. Like, this plays really nicely.
Granted, is this like an updated PC version or a PC re-release?
I don't think so. I think it's the original. Pretty sure.
I mean, yeah, it was a PC release back then too. This is, yeah.
Because I played on Xbox, and like, I remember feeling like it played really well, and I was like, okay. It's definitely feeling like...
Because 2003, I know that's post-Halo 1. Is that post-Halo 2?
I don't believe so.
No, yeah, Halo 2 was 2004. But like, it really is something how Halo, for no pun intended, showed people the way with controls layouts, you know? Like, I remember... So Medal of Honor, that twin stick setup, we had to like cycle through controls for it. Granted, it was there and it was nice. In 64 games, the twin stick setup, there were some games, I think Perfect Dark and GoldenEye, the Rare games, if you plugged two 64 controllers in, you can like use both controllers.
Weird.
So like control one character. There's some interesting gimmick speedruns where it's two people like combined.
Yeah,
that was like fun to watch. But yeah, like, I just remember, because, like, I remember the first time I played mouse and keyboard, it was during the PS1 N64 days, and, like, I had played The World's Not Enough and Doom. Like, those were the console first-person shooters I was used to. And maybe, like, one of the Alien Resurrection games on the PlayStation 1. Point is, it sucked. Like, it was like a D-pad where you turned and moved forward and backward on one end, and then, like, you can maybe strafe with the shoulder buttons if strafing was considered at all.
Yeah.
But the moment I played mouse and keyboard, I was just like, oh no, this will never happen on a console. And to see Halo do it so smartly with the twin sticks and how quickly that just like got everyone doing twin stick controlled at default. I think Microsoft did something there.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, Sony was doing it, but Halo really was the app that pushed that.
Yeah, that got really everywhere. It's wild how big Halo was too as well.
3.2, I understand, because like Halo seemed like an all or nothing thing at one point, where like it's what got dudes into gaming, but it was like the only. It was kind of like the first narrowcast game in that sense. No, that's me just making shit, pull my shit out my ass. There were people who played only Madden before that. Dudes who only played like Final Fantasy, etc.
Yeah. I love my shooter games, like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think about too how like I say I like Nintendo games, and like I'm not like against Nintendo, but I really haven't picked up a Nintendo console since the Wii. I've borrowed a Switch to play like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which I enjoyed, but like I've never felt compelled to grab a Switch, even though I still want to play Metroid Dread.
Yeah. See, that's what got me last time. It kicked me on restart location. We don't want that. We're gonna quick load because I saved.
The Halo truck, yeah, the Warthog. Halo's implementation of vehicles was real good. I think Halo 1 in particular is a good synthesis of like what console first-person shooters were trying to be up to that point, but then like injected with like the strongest aspects of PC first-person shooters. Call you when there's Metroid Dread? Will do, Wiz. Maybe I don't have a Switch or anything, but maybe I'll figure out a workaround. Also, welcome, Wiz. Nice to see ya. Hope, however, does not consist of crossing one's arms and waiting. As long as I fight, I am moved by hope. And if I fight with hope, then I can wait. As the encounter of women and men seeking to be more fully human, dialogue cannot be carried out in a climate of hopelessness. If the dialoguers expect nothing to come of their efforts, their encounter will be empty and sterile, bureaucratic and tedious. Oh, I'm way ahead here. We were talking about mixing A with B mediated by the world. A world which impresses and challenges both parties, giving rise to views or opinions about it. These views, impregnated with anxieties, doubts, hopes, or hopelessness, imply significant themes on the basis of which the program content of education can be built. In its desire to create an ideal model of the good man, a naively conceived humanism often overlooks the concrete, existential present situation of real people. Authentic humanism, in Pierre Furter's words, consists in permitting the emergence of the awareness of our full humanity as a condition and as an obligation, as a situation and as a project. We simply cannot go to the laborers, urban or peasant, in the banking style to give them knowledge or to impose upon them the model of a good man contained in a program whose content we have ourselves organized. Many political and educational plans have failed because their authors designed them according to their own personal views of reality, never once taking into account, except as mere objects of their actions, the men in a situation to whom their program was ostensibly directed.
Apparently can't go that way.
For the truly humanist educator and the authentic revolutionary, the object of action is the reality to be transformed by them together with other people, not other men and women themselves. The oppressors are the ones who act upon the people to indoctrinate them and adjust them to a reality which must remain untouched. Unfortunately, however, in their desire to obtain the support of the people for revolutionary action, revolutionary leaders often fall for the banking line of planning program content from the top down. They approach the peasant or urban masses with projects which may correspond to their own view of the world, but not that of the people. They forget that their fundamental objective is to fight alongside the people for the recovery of the people's stolen humility, not to win people over to their side. Such a phrase does not belong in the vocabulary of revolutionary leaders, but that of the oppressor. The revolutionary's role is to liberate, and to be liberated with the people, not win them over. That so much echoes the line on Ratner, where like, you know, his defendants were all like, well, we got to get him to win over the centrists who might not otherwise do X, Y, and Z. Like, we got to permit the tattoos in if we want to win over the people who want Nazi tattoos. Like,
Yeah, it's like, no, man. Like, you guys really want to turn a whole new leaf and don't want these horrible, horrible people.
In their political activity, the dominant elites utilize the banking concept to encourage passivity in the oppressed, corresponding with the latter's submerged state of consciousness, and takes advantage of the passivity to fill that consciousness with slogans which create even more fear of freedom. This practice is incompatible with a truly liberating course of action, which, by presenting the oppressor's slogans as a problem, helps the oppressed to eject those slogans from within themselves. After all, the task of the humanist is surely not that of pitting their slogans against the slogans of the oppressors, but the oppressed is the testing ground, housing the slogans of first one group and then the other. On the contrary, the task of the humanist is to see that the oppressed become aware of the fact that as dual beings, housing the oppressors within themselves, they cannot be truly human. The task implies that revolutionary leaders do not go to the people in order to bring them a message of salvation, but in order to come to know through dialogue with them both their objective situation and their awareness of that situation, the various levels of perceptions of themselves and the world in which and with which they exist. One cannot expect positive results from an educational or political action program which fails to respect the particular view of the world held by the people. Such a program constitutes cultural invasion, good intentions notwithstanding. Yeah, imagine if any centrist ever bothered reading any Paulo. It's, Wiz, there's so much of this that you can, like, corrupt into a sort of libertarian, like, micro-anarchy, will to power, like, no, you have to be meaningful in word. Like, there's a good amount of it that's like, well, you have to engage your word with humility and good dialogue with others. But, like, it is surprising to think of, like, I don't know, I'm kind of curious what a centrist read would be if they weren't told who this guy was or what his background was, or even if they were reading like a translation of a South American artist. Like, if they were just given the word, what would they do with it?
Defend here, everybody.
I mean, I think the answer is they would conform it to their own reality as outlined by the oppressor mode of banking pedagogy. Like, they would just see it as another kind of like motivational thing.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to like. It's hard to put yourself in that spot. Would just be like, where's your comments?
It's kind of the same way they'll like someone will take like a self-identify with a stormtrooper. It's like, well, like, are you really considering fully through though, like what iconography that hinges on and what you're really saying about yourself deep down? It's like, well, no, man, it's just an affect. Mm-hmm. As Danny DeVito says in Matilda, read? Why would you want to read when you got the television sitting right in front of you? There's nothing you can get from a book you can't get from the television faster. I love Matilda.
Damn right.
Yeah, damn right. Why read when you can be in front of the television?
Yeah, or smartphone, even better.
The starting point for organizing the program content of education or political action must be the present existential concrete situation, reflecting the aspirations of the people. I mean, thinking of what a centrist would react to reading Freire, we see this kind of with how fucking at our table guy, Jamie Harrison, reacting to the DSA candidates winning and such, just saying like, oh, you're popular? Don't come for our resources. Like, buddy, your resources aren't that much, first off, but like...
Also, like, what the fuck are resources for, you fucking idiot? Like...
The starting point for organizing the program content of education or political action must be the present existential concrete situation, reflecting the aspirations of the people. Why don't we get those data centers out of El Paso, you know? Also, I see the battery is blinking, so this starting point paragraph might be a good point to pick back up after we go on our break and do our battery swap.
You know? We got time. Good lord! Tell you what, these fascists in these little towers are very upsetting.
The little fascists in their little towers?
Yeah. I'm gonna say, I don't like
What is their identity besides just being American idea of a bad, like, communist?
Just Russia. It's like...
They're Russian, right?
Yeah, it's almost like they're taking,
I know we said it was Red
Die
Dawn
Hard.
meets the 90s Mario Bros. Movie. Yeah, there's... Oh, is there a bit of Die Hard thing where, like, they're cynically, like, just in it for the cash? Ultimately, there's, like, no actual ideological opposition? Because, like, this game has no ideology beyond, like, the jingoism of, like, America, fuck yeah.
Yeah, oh shit, I knew that. Yeah.
chat, should the camera battery die? Oh, well, Jacob said. All right, we're gonna hit that break time bumper. We're gonna stand up, stretch, be kind to our skeletons, rehydrate. My throat's a little dry from all the reading. Smoke them if you got them. We'll be back with more Freedom Fighters and Paulo Freire after the break. Great seeing you all here. Thank you for watching Technopoverty. We'll be back in a bit.
See you soon, Techno Hotties and Thotties.
Hello, welcome back to Technopoverty. Jacob is playing Freedom Fighters. I'm reading Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Just before we get back to the reading, oh, hello, little girl.
You coming back? Come
Give her her comfort zone.
Welcome, Bean.
Just a few updates before we get back to the reading, or not updates, but just down the line. The next book we're going to be reading is going to be Black Flame by Gretchen Felker-Martin. I've already started a bit ways into it, and boy, what a fun little horror mess this is so far. Black Flame by Gretchen Felker-Martin. I'll probably talk about it while playing Pipistrello or Mina the Hollower. That's going to be the next game I hop on. I'm also considering Silksong. I want to play more furry stuff is what I'm saying. Either way, once we're done with Gretchen Felker-Martin's Black Flame, The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin is going to be the next book in our Summer Scramble. As always, the Summer Scramble, we're going to run this till about maybe September. The whole bit with the program is all these books are under 200 pages. I bring this up, Wiz, you said earlier, imagine if any centrist bothered with reading Paulo. This book is less than 200 pages. We're gonna get through the whole thing here on stream while Jacob plays Freedom Fighters. We read all of the Communist Manifesto on stream.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
One sitting. These things don't take a lot of time to look into. I'm always thinking of Natalie Wynn talking about Marxist church and just wishing she could unlearn theory. Natalie, like what, did you even, I don't know if you learned the stuff. Also, you act like it doesn't take long to internalize this stuff, nor if you find it applicable to your material conditions, is it hard to like grasp.
Right, like we're reading through it in a pretty steady pace. Like even if you took your time and was like, I'm gonna go slow, like.
I mean, even the basics of this are to like have meaningful and intentional dialogue that recognizes your material situation and how you can act upon it. And how to communicate that with people in a reciprocative manner to like better express and kind of recognize common humanity. It's not math. It's not learning equations. It's a general social ethic, ideas. How do you know? I saw it on TV.
Yeah.
Defend here.
Just quoting 3-2 there. When I learned about some atrocity on Technopoverty, it's okay. He watched it on the stream.
Teaching?
Yeah, it's okay. He saw it on the TV. Just, yeah. The Donner Party, you know?
Yeah.
I do find it interesting. I saw The Shining on the TV at a young age. Jacob, do you remember when you first saw Kubrick's The Shining?
Man, yeah.
It was like on TNT or TBS a lot in the 90s from what I remember.
All the time. Especially like, man, I want to say probably when I was like 8 or 9.
Let's pull the game back up. So yeah, just heads up, coming up is going to be Black Flame by Gretchen Felker-Martin. We're going to read The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. And then just change of form. I'm not sure what I'm going to pair this with or where the format's going to be. I might read this on the side and just talk about it. But August Wilson, the piano lesson. We really had fun with Fences earlier this year, and I think after reading Kierkegaard, it was just so stuffy and old, and I wanted something a bit more reflective and modern, and August Wilson, he does that with his plays quite well.
He's really good with it.
Yeah.
Regroup. Let's go.
Oh, cool. Jaw's posting the PDF for Pedagogy of the Oppressed, it looks like, in the chat.
Oh, hell
yeah. This book is just up on the Internet Archive, I think. It's fairly easy to find the full text. Well worth it, and I mean, within the ethic of the author, he wants you to, engage with it in this way. It's not a matter of just like collecting it, keeping it on a shelf, saying you've read it, but cracking it open, breaking it, as he was breaking down methods of education. It's not just saying you have A, so B, or, A and therefore B, but here we are, Freedom Fighters, A, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, B, A with B, in dialogue with the context of the world.
Stand your ground. Team.
If that's too horrifying a concept, that renders you too aware of everything, and it's just so damn cynical that everything's so awful that you just can't, you wish you could unlearn this leftist nonsense in your brain. What are you doing with your life?
Being a fucking baby.
You shot that guy like pretty solidly in the groin, and he just kept walking. I'm amazed.
Right? Straight dick shot, and he was not feeling that. Damn, man.
That guy just ate that headshot, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, come on, y'all. I know I got that, dude.
Like, ups that difficulty or something.
You bitch.
Alright, let's get back to Paulo here.
Defend this area. Squad. I'll wait here.
Oh, actually, before that, I just wanted to bring up something that L-Man brought up while we were on break. L-Man says, Aesop's fables, like most morality tales, taught me, don't let this happen to you, don't be this character, didn't teach me how to introspect about what to do if I am all the characters. Yeah, I mean, because like a lot of what he's talking about and what we're mitigating here with this method, or Freire wants to mitigate, that the banking method takes account of, is superstition. Just like, because we don't want to have to be overwhelmed by thinking about all concepts all the time, we find shortcuts to compress and automate, and just like, one of the lazy ways to do that is to be like, oh yeah, that's just how it is and that's unchangeable. And if it's unchangeable and that's just how it is, I don't have to think about it at all. Like, it's just natural that things work that way. And that allows you to free up your more mental load for the more dopamine-inducing things, or focus in the more positive ways on like how you can rationalize narrative and like be happy in the moment, even if it's to your long-term detriment.
Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck.
And I mean, this is kind of like, the reigning thing of like a lot of, theology as well, is just like the assumptions of like what's essential, unfixable, and must be heeded in reality if reality is a living God type entity. This is again why Book of the New Sun is so goddamn good, because that story / world / just conceptually, Gene Wolfe's looking at like how does superstition persist. We can be 10,000 years in the future. We may have lost scientific knowledge, historical knowledge. Things have been brushed away by just the world changing. But superstition persists. Superstitious thinking continues and compounds. So much of that world is just a superstitious vision of the future in a compelling way. Lucid waking. All right. The starting point for organizing the program content of education or political action must be the present, existential, concrete situation, reflecting the aspirations of the people. Also, like, he's just saying focus on localism as well. Like, you got to meet the people where they are, figure out how to dialogue with them, what they know, what they understand of their situation, and how you can help them communicate that and what they need to better be human in their situation.
Abort! You heard me!
Utilizing certain basic contradictions, we must pose this existential, concrete, present situation to the people as a problem which challenges them and requires a response, not just the intellectual level, but at the level of action. We must never merely discourse on the present situation, must never provide the people with programs which have little or nothing to do with their own preoccupations, doubts, hopes, and fears. Programs which at times in fact increase the fears of the oppressed consciousness. It is not our role to speak to the people about our own view of the world, nor to attempt to impose that view on them, but rather to dialogue with the people about their view and ours. We must realize that their view of the world, manifested variously in their action, reflects their situation in the world. Educational and political action, which is not critically aware of this situation, runs the risk either of banking or of preaching in the desert. Don't preach in the desert. That's where Satan tempts you, you know?
Boy, should I actually...
But if you want to have a fun time in the desert...
You know,
Often educators and politicians speak and are not understood because their language is not attuned to the concrete situation of the people they address. Accordingly, their talk is just alienated and alienating rhetoric. The language of the educator or the politician, and it seems more and more clear that the latter must also become an educator in the broadest sense of the word, like the language of the people, cannot exist without thought, and neither language nor thought can exist without a structure to which they refer. In order to communicate effectively, educator and politician must understand the structural conditions in which the thought and language of the people are dialectically framed. It is to the reality which mediates men, and to the perception of that reality held by educators and people, that we must go to find the program content of education. The investigation of what I've termed the people's thematic universe, the complex of their generative themes, inaugurates the dialogue of education as the practice of freedom. The methodology of that investigation must likewise be dialogical, affording the opportunity both to discover the generative themes and to stimulate people's awareness in regard to these themes. Consistent with the liberating purpose of dialogical education, the object of the investigation is not persons as if they were anatomical fragments, but rather the thought language with which men and women refer to reality, the levels at which they perceive that reality, and their view of the world in which their generative themes are found. Before describing a generative theme more precisely, which will also clarify what is meant by the minimum thematic universe, it seems to me indispensable to present a few preliminary reflections. The concept of a generative theme is neither an arbitrary invention nor a working hypothesis to be proved. If it were a hypothesis to be proved, the initial investigation would seek not to ascertain the nature of the theme, but rather the very existence or non-existence of themes themselves. In that event, before attempting to understand the theme in its richness, its significance, its plurality, its transformations, and its historical composition, we would first have to verify whether or not it is an objective fact. Only then we could proceed to apprehend it. Although an attitude of critical doubt is legitimate, it does appear possible to verify the reality of the generative theme, not only through one's own existential experience, but also through critical reflection on the human-world relationship and on the relationships between the people implicit in the former. This point deserves more attention. One may well remember, trite as it seems, that of the uncompleted beings, man is the only one to treat not only his actions, but his very self as the object of his reflection. This capacity distinguishes him from the animals, which are unable to separate themselves from their activity and thus are unable to reflect upon it. And this apparently superficial distinction lie the boundaries which delimit the action of each in his life space. Because the animal's activity is an extension of themselves, the results of that activity are also inseparable from themselves. Animals can neither set objectives nor infuse their transformation of nature with any significance beyond itself. Moreover, the decision to perform this activity belongs not to them but to their species. Animals are, accordingly, fundamentally, beings in themselves. Jaw's getting real necrophilic with the text I see, burying it in his Nos graveyard.
Hell yeah.
The necrophilist, the mechanizer.
God, what a fucking cool name for a band.
I know.
Or an album?
The thing is, reality can only manifest our ideas in the shittiest format just because it's the bare minimum trying to willing its way up, kind of poking through, which is why we always get cool concept from science fiction, but in the shittiest imaginable way. And so it really sucks that Jacob, we do have a real life necrophilist. It's like Elon Musk, He's putting the chips in people's brains and shit. And just
that's true. It's just really dumb and you're like, man, I thought it was gonna be way cooler.
Yeah. I mean, that's the seductive thing about the aestheticizing power of art is even in, it's because the art is telling you thing is bad, but in order to maintain attention in an aesthetic level, it has to make it somewhat appealing in a visual sense, so that it can indicate and keep your attention held on it.
Instead, you get someone who looks like Musk, who is Musk,
right?
Oh, thank
When I realized that just because something's presented as a totalizing theory doesn't mean I need to accept it as such. A lot of stuff opened up to me. Theories can have a world of internal logic, but disciplined aesthetic ought to be able to strip it for parts. Oh, a disciplined eclectic, sorry. Yeah, to the chop shop. Yeah, oh man, like, remember when I was ragging so goddamn hard on Doom Eternal, but still trying to articulate to y'all that I wasn't going to, like, go, like, you know, have a heart attack and be legitimately angry and, like, fucking, like, I'm not gonna, like, off myself over playing Doom Eternal just because it's frustrating. Like, within that frustration, I'm picking it apart and being like, what's rubbing up wrong with me for reality here? And, like, through that critical apparatus, there's still fun to be had with bad art.
What if later, but everything sucks and nothing even looks cool.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to... Isn't that just Canada right now?
Up Night Tonight is the shitty Beatles. Are they any good? No, they suck. Whoa, ladies, let's be chill.
Unable to decide for themselves, unable to objectify either themselves or their activity, lacking objectives which they themselves have set, living submerged in a world to which they can give no meaning, lacking a tomorrow and a today because they exist in an overwhelming present, animals are ahistorical. The ahistorical, overwhelming present, that's also kind of getting at what Jameson's describing with the postmodern state of schizophrenia.
Defend, all of you.
Holding position.
There's almost like a want to, through automating and offloading all the hard decision making, return to like a primal, more automated, like unthinking form of man when things were easier and times were simpler. Their ahistorical life does not occur in the world, taken in its strict meaning. For the animal, the world does not constitute a not I, which could set him apart as an I. The human world, which is historical, serves as a mere prop for being in itself. Animals are not challenged by the configuration which confronts them. They are merely stimulated. Their life is not one of risk-taking, for they are not aware of taking risks. Risks are not challenges perceived upon reflection, but merely noted by the signs which indicate them. They accordingly do not require decision-making responses. Consequently, animals cannot commit themselves. Their ahistorical condition does not permit them to take on life. Because they do not take it on, they cannot construct it. If they do not construct it, they cannot transform its configuration. Nor can they know themselves to be destroyed by life, for they cannot expand their prop world into a meaningful symbolic world, which includes culture and history. As a result, animals do not animalize their configuration in order to animalize themselves, nor do they de-animalize themselves. Even in the forest, they remain beings in themselves, as animal-like as they are in the zoo. In contrast, the people, aware of their activity and world in which they are situated, acting in function of the objectives which they propose, having the seat of their decisions located in themselves and in their relations to the world and with others, infusing the world with their creative presence by means of transformation they effect upon it, unlike animals, not only live, but exist, and their existence is historical. Animals live out their lives on an atemporal, flat, uniform prop. Humans exist in a world in which they are constantly recreating and transforming. For animals, here is only a habitat with which they enter into a contact. For people, here signifies not merely a physical space, but also a historical space.
Thank you, Ja. I appreciate it. I did do some killer nut shots right there as well.
Hell yeah. We got a cutscene coming up?
Potentially, I believe.
Let's see.
Oh. No, I think I'm just gonna go to another location, but we got one done. Take that harbor.
Is there 3 bases, it looks
There are
like?
3 bases. I believe we've taken out the helicopter, which was a pain in the ass.
Alright.
Let's see what we got here. So have to raise a flag on a hotel. Okay.
Do you have to walk to these places? It's like an open map?
No, this is like one big map, and then you have 3 different areas that you go through the sewers to get, and they're like
Okay,
maps within the same city.
okay.
But like there's a helicopter in one, but you have to destroy like a section to stop that helicopter. So you have to go back and forth between different things to unlock stuff too.
I was thinking about this the other day because I was thinking about like Spider-Man games and why they don't work for me, and I don't like how uncurated the locations are. And I find it like because like the impulse with Spider-Man games is always to just make a big open world New York.
Yeah.
So I'm liking how this is able to create like these curated, like more video gamey, like geography spaces for like interesting levels by like breaking it up with the sewer device. You know?
Yeah.
Because like the best Spider-Man games are the ones that don't do the open world shit, because like then you have like a curated, like kind of momentum driven thing where you have to like situationally like actually like utilize powers and think, and like
the story is way more
there's actually like
compelling.
like ludonarrative like shit going on, whereas like the sandbox is like, well, here's a bunch of moves and go collect coins.
Was it the newest one that kind of like at some points would randomly be like, oh, hold on, we gotta get you over here for the story plot or whatever?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about Insomniac Spider-Man, not just because I'm a big Spider-Man nerd, but I think it's as a big AAA blockbuster project of its time, it really captures a certain ethos of like where gamers and maybe superhero nerds, like it's an interesting totem pole of like, what does this audience want and what does that tell me about this current like moment.
Oh yeah.
It's got a very interesting, it's got a very passive voice in a very interesting way as far as like wanting to be an active superhero game, but like it's that big problem a lot of like current it's the big problem of like it wants there to be a current, like it wants there to be an already built-in mythology to respect about the character. So there's a huge history, there's a huge lore, everything's already been done. We're at the end of history with Spider-Man in a way at the start of the game. Like we're a few years in, and it's supposed to be like things are established and done.
We're rolling.
And because
Let's
it
move.
does that, every character already passively has a relationship going, and they're just like passively walking in and out of a sort of sandbox. Like there's no active history going on. It's just a revolving door at a sandwich like shop.
I liked them.
Or an automat, I guess I would say more. It's a Spider-Man automat more than it is anything else.
I picture it is like a Spider-Man simulator and it's like a Spider-Man walking sim almost. Like,
yeah,
there is stuff. It's like you're just wandering around New York City if you want. You can do that, or you can't.
There's a weird amount of like he's already like had weird on the rocky like on and off relationship with MJ. He already knows Black Cat. Again, like he already knows every no character's a new introduction, but it still wants to be like the first game in a series, and it does some dissonant storytelling stuff because of that.
Yeah.
Also just a very tired sense of like it's 12 squares.
Let's go. Yes, sir.
Like the
I'm
city's divided up on a grid into I think like 12 blocks. And each of those 12 squares has like the exact same mini mission. So like so like you don't feel like you're doing like intentional like anything. You just feel like you're sweeping up each grid in the same way. It's like, oh, here's this type of mission in this block. Here's this type of mission in this block.
Yeah, you really don't get lost in the story whatsoever.
Strictly speaking, here, now, there, tomorrow, and yesterday do not exist for the animal, whose life, lacking self-consciousness, is totally determined. Animals cannot surmount the limits imposed by here,
Relax.
the now,
Yeah,
or the
just
there.
breathe.
Humans, however, because they are aware of
Thank
themselves
you.
and thus of
It's
the world,
already getting better.
because they are conscious beings, exist in a dialectical relationship between the determination of limits and their own freedom. As they separate themselves from the world, which they objectify, as they separate themselves from their own activity. Oh yeah, let me turn down the volume. We thought there was going to be a cutscene. As they separate themselves from their own activity, as they locate the seed of their decisions in themselves and in their relations with the world and others, people overcome the situations which limit them, the limit situations. Once perceived by individuals as fetters, the obstacles to their liberation as obstacles to their liberation, these situations stand out in relief from the background, revealing their true nature as concrete historical dimensions of a given reality. Men and women respond to the challenge with actions which Vieira-Pinto calls limit acts, those directed at negating and overcoming, rather than passively accepting, the given. Acts of rebellion, as Camus would call them. I rebel, therefore we are. Thus, it is not the limit situations in and of themselves which create a climate of hopelessness, but rather how they are perceived by women and men at a given historical moment, whether they appear as fetters or as insurmountable barriers. As critical perception is embodied in action, a climate of hope and confidence develops which leads men to attempt to overcome the limit situations. This objective can be achieved only through action upon the concrete, historical reality in which limit situations historically are found. As realities transform and these situations are superseded, new ones will appear, which in turn will evoke new limit acts. The prop world of animals contains no limit situations due to its ahistorical character. Similarly, animals lack the ability to exercise limit acts, which require a decisive attitude towards the world, separation from and objectification of the world in order to transform it. Organically bound to their prop, animals do not distinguish between themselves and the world. Accordingly, animals are not limited by limit situations, which are historical, but rather by the entire prop. And the appropriate role for animals is not to relate to their prop, in that event the prop would be the world, but to adapt to it. Thus, when animals produce a nest, a hive, or a burrow, they are not creating products which result from limit acts, that is, transforming responses. Their productive activity is subordinated to the satisfaction of a physical necessity which is simply stimulating, rather than challenging. An animal's product belongs immediately to its physical body, whilst man freely confronts his product. Only products which result from the activity of a being but do not belong to its physical body, though these products may bear its seal, can give a dimension of meaning to the context, which thus becomes the world. A being capable of such production, who thereby is necessarily aware of himself, is a being for himself, could no longer be if she or he were not in the process of being in the world with which he or she relates, just as the world would no longer exist if this being did not exist. The difference between animals, who, because their activity does not constitute limit acts, cannot create products detached from themselves, and humankind, who through their action upon the world create the realm of culture and history, is that only the latter are beings of praxis. Only human beings are praxis. The praxis which, as the reflection and action which truly transform reality, is the source of knowledge and creation. Animal activity, which occurs without a praxis, is not creative. People's transforming activity is. It is as transforming and creative beings that humans, in their permanent relations with reality, produce not only material goods, tangible objects, but also social institutions, ideas, and concepts. Through their continuing praxis, men and women simultaneously create history and become historical social beings. Because, in contrast to animals, people can tri-dimensionalize time into the past, the present, and the future. Their history, in function of their own creations, develops as a constant process of transformation within which epochal units materialize. These epochal units are not closed periods of time, static compartments within which people are confined. Were this the case, a fundamental condition of history, its continuity, would disappear. On the contrary, epochal units interrelate in the dynamics of historical continuity. It's funny to just think of, like, do not compartmentalize the epochal moments of history. It will be bad for the species. Like, that's such a, like, simultaneously, like, fantasy invocation warning, but there is such a, I don't know, I find it quite true as well. Like, do not break the chain of history, for then we are lost. These epochal units are not closed periods of time, static compartments within which people are confined. Were this the case, a fundamental condition of history, its continuity, would disappear. On the contrary, epochal units interrelate in the dynamics of historical continuity. An epoch is characterized by a complex of ideas, concepts, hopes, doubts, values, and challenges in dialectical interaction with their opposites, striving towards plenitude. The concrete representation of many of these ideas, values, concepts, and hopes, as well as the obstacles which impede the people's full humanization, constitute the themes of that epoch. These themes imply others, which are opposing or even antithetical. They also indicate tasks to be carried out and fulfilled. Thus, historical themes are never isolated, independent, disconnected, or static. They are always interacting dialectically with their opposites. Nor can these themes be found anywhere except in the human-world relationship. The complex of interacting themes of an epoch constitutes its thematic universe. Confronted by this universe of themes in dialectical contradiction, persons take equally contradictory positions. Some work to maintain the structures, others to change them. As antagonism deepens between themes which are an expression of reality, there is a tendency for the themes and for reality itself to be mythicized, establishing a climate of irrationality and sectarianism. Again, Book of the New Sun. This climate threatens to drain the themes of their deeper significance and to deprive them of their characteristically dynamic aspect. In such a situation, myth-creating irrationality itself becomes a fundamental theme. Its opposing theme, critical and dynamic view of the world, strives to unveil reality, unmask its mythicization, and achieve a full realization of the human task, the permanent transformation of reality in favor of the liberation of people. In the last analysis, the themes both contained and are contained in limit situations. The tasks they imply require limit acts. When the themes are concealed by the limit situations and thus are not clearly perceived, the corresponding tasks, people's responses in the form of historical action, can be neither authentically nor critically fulfilled. In this situation, humans are unable to transcend the limit situations to discover that beyond these situations, and in contradiction to them, lies an untested feasibility. In sum, limit situations imply the existence of persons who are directly or indirectly served by these situations, and of those who are negated and curbed by them. Once the latter come to perceive these situations as the frontier between being and being more human, rather than the frontier between being and nothingness, they begin to direct their increasingly critical actions towards achieving the untested feasibility implicit in that perception. On the other hand, those who are served by the present limit situation regard the untested feasibility as a threatening limit situation, which must not be allowed to materialize, and act to maintain the status quo. Consequently, liberating actions upon a historical milieu must correspond not only to the generative themes, but to the way in which these themes are perceived. The requirement in turn implies another, the investigation of meaningful thematics. This is bringing to mind our guy Walter Benjamin. We have read the work of art in the age of its mechanical reproduction. I've been meaning to read his work on violence on stream. He has a short pamphlet. I said I was going to do it during the Soldiers of Spring block. I lied. We'll get to it, gang. Maybe, honestly, if I end up finishing this book and Jacob still has a bit of this game to play, we can read some Walter Benjamin. I think he has some nice short essays that are good single session bits. But this brings to mind a concept of his called the Angel of History. What is up, AR Berlin? Yeah, Jacob is setting this hotel on fire in the name of freedom, and we're reading Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I don't think I mentioned it while I was talking about the upcoming books, which once again are Black Flame by Gretchen Felker-Martin and The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. But this Sunday at the Technopoverty Theater, we will be watching No Other Land, the 2024 documentary about Palestine. The Palestinian 2024 documentary, we'll be watching No Other Land is what I'm saying. Depending on if we get around to it, Monday we may be talking a lot about the Odyssey as well. I know we are both excited to see that in IMAX.
Also agree 3256 Spider-Man 2 on the PS2 was peak.
Yeah, that one's open world, but it was the first time they were doing it, and also it's a PS2 open world game, so the amount of crap you have to lick the corners for is manageable.
They had such a fun time with it. They were taking a lot of good design stuff from the earlier ones and really like get it.
I remember really liking the combat in Spider-Man Web of Shadows, but there were these little collectible tokens. Nice, good job, mission accomplished. Glad you could get erect for the flag, Jacob.
I love getting erections.
Spider-Man Web of Shadows, I just want to bring up because like it was on the 360, so it had achievements. And I remember there were these little tokens, these little optional tokens you collect. They're like little currency. And I collected like 100 of them and got a trophy. And I was like, okay, how many of these can there be in the game? There were a lot. They were everywhere, literally everywhere. I got about 1,000 of those spider tokens, and I checked the achievements, and I still hadn't ticked the box for collect half of the spider tokens in the game. And I was getting to the point on the map where like you couldn't see any, and you'd have to really start digging for them. And I was just like, holy shit, what are you asking me to do here? Why?
Yeah, like, what?
I just dread encountering that in a video game. I do not mind playing an open world game where I don't get the urge to see everything. I actually really like that there's whole sides of Elden Ring I'll never know anything about. Whole sides of Morrowind, I have no clue. I do not have a desire to lick every corner, but like I got enough and was sated, but feel like the world has been realized in a fun way.
Yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2, I'm very excited to see you play and to see what you run into.
I'm very curious about that too, which we'll be getting to probably after Haunt Timber. Remember, Jaw. And to anyone else interested, after Haunt Timber, we're going to do some horror games again, as always with Haunt Timber. But come November, we're probably going to enter cowboy country. Red Dead 2, also I know GTA 6 is coming around then. Jacob and I are trying to think of a way we can kind of maybe have Jacob playing GTA 6, me playing Red Dead 2, and while we're bouncing between the two, I'm going to be reading through a bunch of Richard Slotkin's American and American continental history, not just America the nation, but Regeneration Through Violence by Richard Slotkin. We're going to start there, and we'll see how much Cowboy Country is able to sustain that. He has a whole trilogy of books about just like the history of the American frontier, even before America as a nation. Like he talks about how the Spanish, you know, they had their frontier myths and their mythology of like the conquistador and needing to like tame a savage land, and how that attitude has lingered on the North American continent ever since. The whole trilogy goes from like the 1600s to the 1900s. It eventually ends up with like discussing depictions of the gunslinger in the frontier in Hollywood cinema of the 50s and 60s. The first book came out in like the 1970s, and then Slotkin published the second volume in the 80s, third volume in the 90s. Regeneration Through Violence, that's way down the line. I'm not going to tell you what we're doing for Haunt Timber, because I don't know, I'm going to probably shotgun a bunch of Peter Straub. I don't know what I'm doing for Scary Season yet, but I do have Floating Dragon sitting on my shelf.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, that's just a bit of a preview of everything in regards to that.
I did want to give one quick suggestion of this really cool book I've been listening to on Audible, and or you can get from your local library through Coop. It is Comedians, Drunks, Thieves, Scoundrels, and the History of American Comedy.
Okay.
By Cliff Nesterin. Absolutely incredible.
It talks about kind of the pre-vaudeville origin kind of stuff.
It talks everything. I had no idea how Rodney Dangerfield became a person, like a personality, and like his very shady background. And it's just like, it's so cool, and it's very like mob oriented stuff too. And the guy who wrote it did a lot of interviews with people, so he does like impersonations while he's doing the book. So I do recommend like listening to the audio. It's really good.
Go ahead, and if you want to throw that one in the chat.
Yeah, you know, actually, let me see if I can find a good audio of that one. But it is so very interesting. If you like weird history, I mean, the history of comedy.
Generative themes can be located in concentric circles, moving from the general to the particular. The broadest epochal unit, which includes a diversified range of units and subunits, continental, regional, national, and so forth, contains themes of universal character. I consider the fundamental theme of our epic to be that of domination, which implies its opposite, the theme of liberation, as the objective to be achieved. It is this tormenting theme which gives our epic the anthropological character mentioned earlier. In order to achieve humanization, which presupposes the elimination of dehumanizing oppression, it is absolutely necessary to surmount the limit situations in which people are reduced to things. Within the smaller circles, we find themes and limit situations characteristic of societies on the same continent or on different continents, which, through these themes and limit situations, share historical similarities. For example, underdevelopment, which cannot be understood apart from the relationship of dependency, represents a limit situation characteristic of societies of the Third World. The task implied by this limit situation is to overcome the contradictory relation of these object societies to the metropolitan societies. This task constitutes the untested feasibility for the Third World.
Oh, sorry, that's me. And also, I think I just found the audiobook of The Comedians on the Internet Archive, so I posted that link for everyone.
Hell yeah.
Please listen along.
I'm gonna post that. All right, I've left the Porvenir Massacre up for a while. If you don't know shit about the Texas Rangers, maybe before I take it down in the moment here, you click on the Story of Texas link I have up there. I'm about to replace it with Jacob's thing so that you have a copy of The Comedians. There we go.
Yeah, it might be a PDF of, either way, it's on the Internet Archive, and I cannot recommend it enough. It is fascinating, really funny, and super interesting. Like, it would be a great book, or a great movie. Yes, 3-2. The very Chuck Norris.
Wishes.
He helped give the good propaganda.
Yeah,
really
revived him in the 90s when we needed to relitigate the border situation with NAFTA and all that.
Mm-hmm.
God.
Man, fuck him. Fuck him.
Any given society within the broader epochal unit contains, in addition to the universal continental historically similar themes, its own particular themes, its own limit situations. Within yet smaller circles, thematic diversifications can be found within the same society, divided into areas and sub-areas, all of which are related to the societal whole. These constitute epochal subunits. For example, within the same national unit, one can find the contradiction of the coexistence of the non-contemporaneous. Sport?
Let's go. Right. Let's go.
Within these subunits, national themes may or may not be perceived in their true significance. They may simply be felt. Sometimes not even that. But the non-existence of themes within the subunits is absolutely impossible. The fact that individuals in a certain area do not perceive a generative theme or perceive it in a distorted way may only reveal a limit situation of oppression in which people are still submerged.
Move it, squad.
In general, a dominated consciousness, which has not yet perceived a limit situation in its totality, apprehends only its epiphenomena and transfers to the latter the inhibiting force, which is the property of the limit situation. This fact is of great importance for the investigation of generative themes. When people lack a critical understanding of their reality, apprehending it in fragments which they do not perceive as interacting constituent elements of the whole, they cannot truly know that reality. To truly know it, they would have to reverse their starting point. They would need to have a total vision of the context in order subsequently to separate and isolate its constituent elements, and by means of this analysis, achieve a clearer perception of the whole. This really reminds me of, let me see if I can just remember it. The most terrifying fact in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all of its parts. Were they to do so, humankind would quickly be driven to madness. It's the opening of the Call of Cthulhu. It's that Lovecraft line everybody thinks goes really hard, and it's just like, knowing things scary. It's shut up, Howard. Equally appropriate for the mythology of thematic investigation and for problem-posing education is the effort to present significant dimensions of an individual's contextual reality, the analysis of which will make it possible for him to recognize the interaction of the various components. Meanwhile, the significant dimensions, which in their turn are constituted as parts of interaction, should be perceived as dimensions of total reality. In this way, a critical analysis of a significant existential dimension makes possible a new critical attitude towards the limit situations. The perception and comprehension of reality are rectified and acquire new depth. When carried out with the methodology of conscientizgao, thematic universe, the generative themes of interaction, the investigation of the generative theme contained in the minimum thematic universe, the generative themes of interaction, thus introduces or begins to introduce women and men to the critical form of thinking about their world. Yeah, I think Elman or 3-2, it's been brought up in chat before. Also, oh yeah, it's that, yeah, Captain Quasar.
Let's go. Right, let's work. Take this. Come on, follow me.
Yep, talking about the Popeneer massacre. Captain Quasar, did you see that in response to Houston? Like the Rangers are investigating ICE. Like they're getting the real pros on the job.
Y'all boys ain't never seen racism.
You boys are like 3 years old. You're gonna blow your load. We've been doing this for over 100 years, so let's get right with this.
You ain't even heard of a sundown town, boy.
Yeah.
I grew up in one.
My grandfather chartered one.
Yeah.
In the event, however, that human beings perceive reality as dense, impenetrable, and enveloping, it is indispensable to proceed with the investigation by means of abstraction. This method does not involve reducing the concrete to the abstract, which would signify the negation of its dialectical nature, but rather maintaining both elements as opposites which interrelate dialectically in the act of reflection. This dialectical moment of thought is exemplified perfectly in the analysis of concrete existential coded situations. Its decoding requires moving from the abstract to the concrete. This requires moving from the part to the whole, and then returning to the parts. This, in turn, requires that the subject recognize himself in the object, the coded concrete existential situation, and recognize the object as a situation in which he finds himself, together with other subjects. If the decoding is well done, this movement of flux and reflux from the abstract to the concrete, which occurs in the analysis as a coded situation, leads to the supersedence of the abstraction by the critical perception of the concrete, which has already ceased to be a dense, impenetrable reality. Just, it makes things legible, you know?
Yeah.
This is like what we've talked about before, even when we tackle older books. Eventually I want to get to Moby Dick, but I mean this came up a lot, I think probably at its peak when we were talking about Paradise Lost, is I'm trying to close that distance and show you how there's a living, breathing, human impulse within the text. It's not just that it's an old thing to be respected and it's inanimate and it's ancient and there's no meaning or weight to it now. It's that, a lot of the classics are like this. There's something very vibrant and alive in them. There is a bit in Moby Dick when that whale fucking trashes that ship at the end and Ahab's going crazy, and just the way the prose describes that action, I'm like, this existed before movies. How the fuck did he know to put the words in the order to convey this sense like that? Because it's so visceral. Shit like that, just... it's so fucking cool, but yeah, it's arresting, it's aestheticizing, it rattles something human in a way you don't immediately have the words to describe. That is what cool is.
It's like, whoa.
Pull out, get moving.
And then from there you have to investigate, why did I feel that was cool? And from there you can, begin to kind of recognize more where you are within your interfacing with the world. Maybe investigate why you were making several right-wing movies about how horse cartoons
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
reaffirm your conservative masculinity. Maybe you should just put on a fursuit and go have some fun,
Just go into it. People love it.
I mean, I'm sure Spirit the Stallion's a good movie. I just don't know if it's the right-wing masculinity renaissance figure you think it is, or if you're just telling on yourself. Jacob, I love Zack Snyder's Watchmen, but why does Rorschach's face look like my dad getting kicked by a horse?
That's very weird. I've never noticed that before, honestly.
I mean, when I saw it in theaters, the theatrical cut, it's my cousin barfing on my sister.
Yeah.
but like, I don't know, they must have changed it when they re-released it.
Yeah, I feel like there was some censorship going on. The first one was a little bit too, or I was upset.
You know, they're just too hard on Zack Snyder. The man they gave
all the money to.
All the money and the Superman and Batman license too.
Regroup. Do it.
When an individual is presented with a coded existential situation, a sketch or photograph which leads by abstraction to the concreteness of existential reality, his tendency is to split that coded situation. In the process of decoding, the separation corresponds to the stage we call the description of the situation, and facilitates the discovery of the interaction among the parts of the disjoined whole. This whole, the coded situation, which previously had been only diffusely apprehended, begins to acquire meaning as thought flows back to it from the various dimensions. Since, however, the coding is the representation of an existential situation, the decoder tends to take up a step from the representation to the very concrete situation in which and with which she finds herself. It is thus possible to explain conceptually why individuals begin to behave differently with regard to their objective reality, once that reality has ceased to look like a blind alley and has taken on a true aspect, a challenge which human beings must meet. In all the stages of decoding, people exteriorize their view of the world, and in that way they think about the face of the world, fatalistically, dynamically, statically. Their generative themes may be found. A group which does not concretely express a generative thematic, a fact which might appear to imply a non-existence of themes, is on the contrary, suggesting a very dramatic theme, the theme of silence. The theme of silence suggests a structure of mutism in face of the overwhelming force of limit situations. Mutism was broken by the line, and it was kind of weird how it hyphenated. I must re-emphasize that the generative theme cannot be found in people, divorced from reality, nor yet in reality, divorced from people, much less in no man's land. It can only be apprehended in the human-world relationship. To investigate the generative theme is to investigate people's thinking about reality and people's action upon reality, which is their praxis. For precisely this reason, the methodology proposed requires that the investigators and the people, who would normally be considered objects of that investigation, should act as co-investigators. The more active an attitude men and women take in regard to the exploration of their thematics, the more they deepen their critical awareness of reality, and in spelling out those thematics, take possession of that reality. Some may think it inadvisable to include the people as investigators in the search for their own meaningful thematics, that their intrusive influence, indeed the intrusion of those who are most interested or ought to be in their own education, will adulterate the findings and thereby sacrifice the objectivity of the investigation. This view mistakenly presupposes that themes exist in their original objective purity outside of people, as if themes were things. Actually, themes exist in people and in relations with the world, with reference to concrete facts. The same objective fact cannot evoke different complexes of generative themes in different epochal subunits. There is, therefore, a relation between the given objective fact, the perception women and men have of this fact, and the generative themes. A meaningful thematics is expressed by people, and given a moment of expression will differ from an earlier moment if they have changed their perception of the objective facts to which the themes refer. From the investigator's point of view, the important thing is to detect the starting point at which the people visualize the given and to verify whether or not during the process of investigation any transformation has occurred in their way of perceiving reality. Objective reality, of course, remains unchanged. If the perception of that reality changes in the course of the investigation, that fact does not impair the validity of the investigation. We must realize that the aspirations, the motives, and the objectives implicit in the meaningful thematics are human aspirations, motives, and objectives. They do not exist out there somewhere as static entities. They are occurring. They are as historical as human beings themselves. Consequently, they cannot be apprehended apart from them. To apprehend these themes and to understand them is to understand both the people who embody them and the reality to which they refer. But, precisely because it's not possible to understand these themes apart from people, it is necessary that those concerned understand them as well. Thematic investigation thus becomes a common striving towards awareness of reality and towards self-awareness, which makes this investigation a starting point for the educational process or for cultural action of a liberating character. The real danger of the investigation is not that the supposed objects of the investigation, discovering themselves to be co-investigators, might adulterate the analytical results. On the contrary, the danger lies in the risk of shifting the focus of the investigation from the meaningful themes to the people themselves, thereby treating the people as objects of the investigation. Since this investigation is to serve as a basis for developing an educational program in which teacher-student and student-teachers combine their cognitions of the same object, the investigation itself must likewise be based on reciprocity of the action. Thematic investigation, which occurs in the realm of the human, cannot be reduced to a mechanical act. As a process of search, of knowledge, and of thus creation, it requires the investigators to discover the interpenetration of problems and the linking of meaningful themes. The investigation will be most educational when it is most critical when it avoids the narrow outlines of partial or focalized views of reality and sticks to the comprehension of total reality. Thus, the process of searching for the meaningful thematics should include a concern for the links between themes, a concern to pose for these themes as problems, and a concern for their historical, cultural context. Ja, this kind of reminds me of when you asked me about like what the Technopoverty's recurring themes and ideas and things are about, and like I tried to articulate in general, like, I don't know, I find something fascinating about what we do to channel violence and find violence acceptable in society, like through the simulation of shooting and murdering and the way the innuendo, the sex that passes through the censor of like what dehumanization is and what these currents are trying to drive within our society. You know, the Jameson I always bring up when talking about historical distance and like wanting to be against that.
Follow me. Come with me. We're rolling. Let's move. Yeah, I think you have me confused.
The risk I feel we're running in trying to compartmentalize and sever the chain of history, even though I know that's not a dig at Fukuyama, because I know Fukuyama himself has said like the end of history wasn't like a correct stance.
This area. Come on, I'll cover you.
But in other ways, like more sinister ways, like scapegoating postmodernism and assuming a method of life sustained by the 1950s economy is an essential and infinite thing that should be recreated ad nauseum.
Let's move. Get over here. Come with me.
Follow you? No way, man.
Guys, I'm trying to save, but you won't let me save.
Are they blocking your way into the sewer?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Open sewer, there we go.
Cool. How many levels did you clear tonight? You making good progress, do you feel?
Yeah, I've done 2. I think I'm doing the whole series, this little level.
Nice.
Level and sub-levels. Quick save that shit.
Yes. Quick save and keep going.
Thank y'all for being here with us while we do this.
It is funny and interesting how within this sort of schizophrenic, without context lensing of liberation, like, you know, the iconography of freedom fighters is this apolitical political game, like compartmentalization is the answer, just bit by bit, like total inverse logic of reality in terms of like, you guys don't have any clue what's going on, just gun, shoot, go.
Yeah. Gun, shoot, go. Listen, blow up the thing.
I think this gets into something I'm getting more and more understanding of, and something Lux is very hot on, is the way video games, like the potential they have to just create mindsets of just this reactionary, mechanistic, necrophilist, just like everything's an objective. A to B, like it gets you into that whole thing, like the thing we've talked about with Dark Souls, where like, yeah, Dark Souls makes you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but like the fake reality that Dark Souls takes place in provides bootstraps.
Yeah.
Whereas in real life, you know, what if you don't have those bootstraps to pull up in the first place? There's not a reality itself isn't a square hole, square peg puzzle in the same way that video games are, even at their most like intricate and challenging.
Yeah.
But we are in a compartmentalized world, and a lot of people are spending a lot of times indoors where video games are their primary means of ingesting narrative, and if they're not doing so critically, it can internalize, well, all the chud shit we see around us, you know?
Yeah.
Just as the educator may not elaborate a program to present it to people, neither may the investigator elaborate itineraries for researching the thematic universe, starting from points which he has predetermined. Both education and the investigation designed to support it must be sympathetic activities, in the etymological sense of the word. That is, they must consist of communication and of the common experience of a reality perceived in the complexity of its constant becoming. The investigator who, in the name of scientific objectivity, transforms the organic into something inorganic, what is becoming into what is, life into death, is a person who fears change. He or she sees in change, which is not denied, but neither is it desired, not a sign of life, but a sign of death and decay. He or she does not want to study change, but in order to stop it, not in order to stimulate or deepen it. Oh, he or she does want to study change, but in order to stop it, not in order to stimulate or deepen it. However, in seeing change as a sign of death, and in making people the passive objects of investigation in order to arrive at rigid models, one betrays their own character as a killer of life. I repeat, the investigation of thematics involves the investigation of the people's thinking which occurs only in and among the people together seeking out reality. I cannot think for others or without others, nor can others think for me. Even if the people's thinking is a superstitious or naive one, it is only as they rethink their assumptions and action that they can change. Producing and acting upon their own ideas, not consuming those of others, must constitute that process. People, as beings in a situation, find themselves rooted in temporal spatial conditions which mark them and which they also mark. They will tend to reflect on their own situationality and, to the extent that they are challenged by it, act upon it. Human beings are because they are in a situation, and they will be more the more they not only critically reflect upon their existence, but critically act upon it. Reflection upon situationality is reflection about the very condition of existence. Critical thinking by means of which people discover each other to be in a situation. Only as the situation ceases to present itself as a dense, enveloping reality or a tormenting blind alley, and they can come to perceive it as an objective, problematic situation, only then can commitment exist. Humankind emerge from their submersion and acquire the ability to intervene in reality as it is unveiled. Intervention in reality, historical awareness itself, thus represents a step forward from emergence and results from the Konsensiezakau of a situation. Konsensiezakau is the deepening of the attitude of awareness characteristic in all emergence. Every thematic investigation which deepens historical awareness is thus really educational, while all authentic education investigates thinking. The more educators and the people investigate the people's thinking and are thus jointly educated, the more they continue to investigate. Education and thematic investigation, and the problem-posing concept of education, are simply different moments of the same process. In contrast with the anti-dialogical and non-communicative deposits of the banking method of education, the program content of the problem-posing method, dialogical par excellence, is constituted and organized by the student's view of the world, where their own generative themes are found. The content thus constantly expands and renews itself. The task of the dialogical teacher in an interdisciplinary team working on the thematic universe revealed by their investigation is to represent that universe to the people for whom he or she must receive it, and to represent it not as a lecture, but as a problem. This reminds me of how, when I would do film classes, one film that would really get to kids and kind of break the wall between like they're like maybe preconceived and fascist-ish built notion of like old movies is this an aesthetic category, a distant thing. An old movie that like a lot of teenagers I recall showing, and suddenly they're all like, oh, that actually like resonated with me on an emotional level and I felt like in dialogue with it. And then from there they started watching other old movies because they were looking to chase that sort of high. The 400 Blows.
Really?
Yeah. Because like I always found it so funny because of that. Because so Chad, just to give you some context, I spent about 2 years in El Paso doing a summer film academy thing where I would teach kids how to shoot and edit videos, and they would do short films. And part of it was we would watch movies, and the 400 Blows was one that was really just like it always clicked. And again, black and white, French. I believe it's either from like either 59 or 61. It's like right on the cusp. Jean-Pierre Francois Truffaut's, it's not his first movie, but like it's probably one of his more popularly known ones. Famous for its final scene. You familiar with the 400 Blows, Jacob?
A little bit.
Yeah. Basically, it's about a French teenager growing up in France in the 50s or 60s, I forget the exact decade. He's just, it's rebel without a cause. It's a teenager when he's not sure what he's doing, and his home life's not that great, and he's not you know, going to school. He's ditching. He's just kind of screwing around, getting in trouble with the law. It's a fun little movie.
Coming of age, sort of.
Yeah, also, like, you know, innovated a lot of cinema verite techniques. It's like very much shot on the streets. You know, if you're a fan of Train Spotting and you kind of want to see something that's nowhere near as explicit but created a lot of like that visual language, it is, you know, one of the pillars of the French New Wave of cinema, the 400 Blows.
Fall back, come on. Bring it on.
Let us say, for example, that a group has the responsibility of coordinating a plan for adult education in a peasant area with a high percentage of illiteracy. The plan includes a literacy campaign and a post-literacy phase. During the former stage, problem-posing education seeks out and investigates the generative word. In the post-literacy stage, it seeks out and investigates the generative theme. Now, just a reminder, Freire really did enact literacy programs. He worked in the government in the Department of Culture and Education. He did a little experiment where he educated like 300 sugarcane harvesters in 45 days. He brought them to full literacy. He recreated that program, wrote a lot about it, implemented it elsewhere. So he's speaking from real experience when he's talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
Let us here, however, consider only the investigation of the generative themes or the meaningful thematics. Once the investigators have determined the area in which they will work and have acquired a preliminary acquaintance with the area through secondary sources, they initiate the first stage of the investigation. This beginning, like any beginning in any human activity, involves difficulties and risks which are to a certain point normal, although they are not always evident in the first contact with the individuals of the area. In this first contact, the investigators need to get a significant number of persons to agree to an informal meeting during which they can talk about the objectives of their presence in the area. In this meeting, they explain the reason for their investigation, how it is to be carried out, and to what use it will be put. They further explain that the investigation will be impossible without a relation of mutual understanding and trust. If the participants agree to both the investigation and its subsequent process, the investigators should call for volunteers among the participants to serve as assistants. These volunteers will gather a series of necessary data about the life of the area. Of even greater importance, however, is the active presence of these volunteers in the investigation. Meanwhile, the investigators begin their own visits to the area, never forcing themselves, but acting as sympathetic observers with an attitude of understanding towards what they see. While it is normal for investigators to come to the area with values which influence their perceptions, this does not mean that they may transform the thematic investigation into a means of imposing these values. The only dimension of these values which it is hoped the people whose thematics are being investigated will come to share, it is presumed that the investigators will possess this quality, is a critical perception of the world, which implies a correct method of approaching reality in order to unveil it. And critical perception cannot be imposed. Thus, from the very beginning, thematic investigation is expressed as an educational pursuit, as cultural action. During their visits, the investigators set their critical aim on the area under study, as if it were for them an enormous, unique, living code to be deciphered. They regard the area as a totality, and visit upon it attempt to split it by analyzing the partial dimensions which impress them. Through this process, they expand their understanding of how the various parts interact, which will later help them penetrate the totality itself. During this decoding stage, the investigators observe certain moments of life in the area, sometimes directly, sometimes by means of informal conversations with the inhabitants. They register everything in their notebooks, including apparently unimportant items, the way the people talk, their style of life, their behavior at church and at work. They record the idiom of the people, their expressions, their vocabulary, and their syntax. Not their incorrect pronunciation, but rather the way they construct their thought. It is essential that the investigators observe the area under varying circumstances. Labor in the fields, meetings of a local association, noting the behavior of the participants, the language used, and the relations between the officers and the members. The role played by women and by young people, leisure hours, games and sports, conversations with people in their homes, noting examples of husband-wife and parent-child relationships. No activity must escape the attention of the investigators during the initial survey of the area. After each observation visit, the investigators should draw up a brief report to be discussed by the entire team in order to evaluate the preliminary findings of both the professional investigators and the local assistants. To facilitate the participation of the assistants, the evaluation meeting should be held in the area itself. The evaluation meetings represent a second stage in the decoding of the unique living code, as each person in his decoding essay relates how he perceived or felt a certain occurrence or situation. His exposition challenges all the other decoders by representing to them the same reality upon which they have themselves been intent. At this moment, they reconsider, through the considerations of others, their own previous consideration. Thus, the analysis of reality made by each individual decoder sends them all back, dialogically, to the disjoined whole, which once more becomes a totality, evoking a new analysis by the investigators. Following which a new evaluative and critical meeting will be held. Representatives of the inhabitants participate in all activities as members of the investigative team. The more the group divide and reintegrate the whole, the more closely they approach the nuclei of the principal and secondary contradictions which involve the inhabitants of the area. By locating these nuclei of contradictions, the investigators might even at this stage be able to organize the program content of their educational action. Indeed, if the content reflected in these contradictions, it would undoubtedly contain the meaningful thematics of the area. And one can safely affirm that action based on these observations would be much more likely to succeed than that based on decisions from the top. The investigators should not, however, be tempted by this possibility. The basic thing, starting from the initial perception of these nuclei of contradictions, which include the principled contradiction of society as a larger epochal unit, is to study the inhabitants' level of awareness of these contradictions. Intrinsically, these contradictions constitute limit situations, involve themes, and indicate tasks. If individuals are caught up in and are unable to separate themselves from these limit situations, their theme in reference to these situations is fatalism, and the task implied by the theme is the lack of a task. Thus, although the limit situations are objective realities which call forth needs in individuals, one must investigate with these individuals their level of awareness of these situations. A limit situation as concrete reality can call forth from persons in different areas, and even in sub-areas of the same area, quite opposite themes and tasks. Thus, the basic concern of the investigators should be to concentrate on the knowledge of what Goldman calls real consciousness and potential consciousness. Real consciousness is the result of multiple obstacles and deviations that the different factors of empirical reality put into opposition and submit for realization by the potential consciousness. Real consciousness implies the impossibility of perceiving the untested feasibility, which lies beyond the limit situations. But whereas the untested feasibility cannot be achieved at the level of real or present consciousness, it can be realized through testing action, which reveals its hereto unperceived viability. The untested feasibility and real consciousness are related, as are testing action and potential consciousness. Goldman's concept of potential consciousness is similar to what Nicolai terms unperceived practicable solutions, or untested feasibility, in contrast to perceived practical solutions. Yeah, you don't know what you can enact until you think about and try enacting it. You don't know what potential you're leaving on the table when you don't try.
That's true. You miss every shot you don't take.
See, there's so many ways to boil this into folksyisms and just little aphorisms. It's not like this is terribly hard to like realize.
That's true. This is like a lessons learned through many, many people.
Yeah, like that's the thing too, because Freire credits a lot of his early, his early life socialization as a kid playing pickup soccer with just kids in the neighborhood and like just recognizing their situation as far as socioeconomics goes. Accordingly, the fact that the investigators may be in the first stage of the investigation approximately apprehend the complex of contradictions does not authorize them to begin to structure the program content out of educational action. This perception of reality is still their own, not that of the people. It is with the apprehension of the complex of contradictions that the second stage of the investigation begins. Always acting as a team, the investigators will select some of these contradictions to be developed in the codifications to be used in the thematic investigation. Oh, nice. Since the codifications, sketches or photographs, are the objects which mediate the decoders in their critical analysis, the preparation of these codifications must be guided by certain principles other than the usual ones for making visual aids. Alright, so he's getting into his phase 2 after the investigators have sort of apprehended the totality and are beginning to figure out how to communicate. I'm going to pause there for the night, and it looks like after this cutscene we'll be at a good stopping point, so...
perfect timing.
Gang, thank you for hanging. We're gonna play a little more Freedom Fighters and be on out of here afterwards.
Autumn is definitely here. There is a chill in the air, but the citizens of New York are coping, thanks to the many Soviet engineers working overtime to repair the many power stations that were damaged during the recent rash of rebel attacks. Freedom Phantom, the mythical figure that has eluded our troops and orchestrated so many surprise attacks on central installations, is thought to be responsible. Earlier today, Comrade General Tatarin had this comment.
All that this Freedom Phantom character and his rabbit followers are really achieving is punishing the citizens of New York with these attacks.
I like it better with this
They really must
Me
stop
too.
for the
I hate
sake
that he
of the
covered
people.
up. They
We
made him less
simply
slutty. I
cannot
don't
get
like
the food
that.
and the power
Body
situation
shaming.
He
under
only
control
shows off on the
until we can
battlefield for the
guarantee
boys,
the
I
safety of
guess.
the
That's
hard-working
true.
men and women
Keep it on
of
the
this
field.
administration.
Comrade Tatarin,
You know, there's a code of honor in
Balda
that.
says that the
Maybe I
situation
do
will
respect
only
it.
get under control
Yeah, there's something to
once
be
the
said.
Phantom is found and eliminated. And if this doesn't happen soon, severe measures will be taken against any collaborators and all others helping them. What are your comments on that?
We hope to resolve this in civilized way without further collateral damage. We are here to restore stability, not disrupt it. No further questions, please. Spasibo.
We will be back after a short break. Stay with us.
And you return to your Ninja Turtles base.
Yeah, we're back. Oh, boy.
Looks like the Pixel Goblins are going as well, so we'll give them a raid, but... Folks, I don't know if you're in Austin, Texas at all, but if so, why don't you come hang out with us at Boner Bazaar tomorrow? We're going to be having some fun with that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, no, Saturday?
Saturday. That may affect the movie screening Sunday. No Other Land may either come on earlier or later. It also depends on maybe we selfishly go see The Odyssey.
Yeah, true. Man, we should also do a screening of Boner Bazaar.
Either way, No Other Land will be up on the drive for your viewing pleasure. If something happens Sunday and I fall through, I may make up for it Monday. We'll see. But yeah. This has been Freedom Fighters. Jacob's making great progress. We've also worked through most of Pedagogy of the Oppressed. We're right at the tail end of Chapter 3. It is a 4-chapter book.
Sometimes I wonder how
we
Mr.
may have
Jones
a
gets
session
all
or a
this
session and a half left, depending. If Freedom Fighters is still going, I have some Walter Benjamin and some other stuff we can pull out. But as a reminder, the next book we'll be getting into is Black Flame by Gretchen and Felker-Martin. After that, The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. We might squeeze The Piano Lesson by August Wilson in there somewhere, sometime, but don't worry too much about that yet. You know, there's a bit of improv always at play with this stream. As always, we are a work of parody. That doesn't mean we're not being sincere, but we are beings from a parallel dimension. I know we haven't put this disclaimer down in a while. Luckily, the bigwigs haven't been much of a fuss, but I guess the numbers are just doing that damn well.
Thank goodness.
We did lose our goblin boy to the instabilities of the capitalism meter within our interspace engine. I've also seemed to have blacked out the possibility of traveling to Tuesdays for a bit, but we'll get something set up. There's some major repairs we need to pay to the engine, but we're also doing some overhauls. We started with some weird technical difficulties earlier today with the audio, got that resolved. As always, a work in progress. always progressing.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to the bumper screen now. Y'all have a good night and take care. We're gonna raid on over to the Pixel Goblins as well, but first, why don't you look at that cute footage of Barney for a moment.
Yeah, we love you, techno hotties and thotties.
See you Monday.
Forehead kisses.